Welcome to the Snoozy Scientist, a calm corner of the universe where curiosity and science drift together to ease you into rest. Tonight, we're slipping far beyond history's edge to a river that looks familiar in a way it shouldn't. Two eyes rise above the surface, armor glints, a jaw waits in the light. And yet, this is not a crocodile. Long before the first true crocodile slid beneath the water's surface, other creatures unrelated, unknown to one another, had already found the same design, different bloodlines, same outcome. Across prehistoric rivers and vanished seas, the outline returns again and again. Long body, plated skin, a face built for stillness and sudden power. Scientists call it convergent evolution when life meets the same problem and finds the same answer. The crocodile's wider family, the crocodilomorphs, reach back more than 200 million years. They have watched dinosaurs rise and disappear, felt continents drift apart, and endured the cold and heat of changing worlds. But the mystery runs deeper than survival. Why does the Earth keep remaking this shape from different beginnings? What hidden perfection lies in this design that nature won't let go? How many times has the planet rediscovered this form, and could it return again? Tonight, we'll follow that persistent outline through time, bone by bone, shoreline by shoreline, letting physics, biology, and the long patience of evolution guide us, not to close the book, but to feel how the pages turn. But before we begin, I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from tonight, and what time is it there? I read all your comments, and they are one of my favorite parts of this sleepy little community. If you're enjoying these late night explorations, a like and a subscribe would mean a lot. And for those already subscribed, thank you for being part of this calm little corner of science. And here's a small joke to ease us in. Hopefully, the story won't be so fascinating that it keeps you awake when you should actually be drifting off. But if it does, at least you'll slip into tomorrow with a head full of knowledge. Now take a slow, deep breath. Let your shoulders relax. And together, let's step softly into the long story of the shape that refuses to die. Beneath the still surface of a river, there is a shape that time remembers. It glides almost without sound, as if the water itself parts willingly around it. Every curve, every edge of that body has been shaped by the quiet rules of physics and patience. This is the crocodile's design, a body that has not been hurried or reinvented because it already does what it must, with perfect calm. The body of a crocodile is long and low, resting close to the waterline. From above, it almost disappears, its outline merging with ripples and shadow. That low posture is not just camouflage, it is a geometry of precision. The closer a body lies to the surface, the less drag it feels, the more smoothly it moves through water. Each muscle and bone along its back helps it stay steady, even when the current twists around it. The crocodile's skin, ridged and armored, breaks the surface tension in tiny waves, scattering light that might otherwise reveal its presence. Every part of its shape is an answer to the question of how to move unseen. At the top of its head, the eyes and nostrils sit like small islands. They do not rise by accident. This arrangement allows the crocodile to vanish almost completely, leaving only 2 points of awareness above the water. The eyes are placed to see both air and water worlds at once. They can lock onto movement above the river while their body drifts below it. The nostrils, set just beside them, open and close like small valves, letting the creature breathe without breaking its stillness. It is a design that unites patience and awareness, allowing the crocodile to be both hidden and alive to everything that moves nearby. Beneath the armor, deep within the body, lie the engines of its stillness. Its muscles are heavy and layered, built for sudden bursts rather than endurance. When a crocodile moves, it does not waste energy. It waits, coiled like a spring, until the moment comes. Then, with a single thrust of its tail and a surge from its limbs, the calm surface erupts. For that instant, physics and biology meet in violent harmony, and the water becomes part of the attack. But when the strike is over, the energy fades, and the river becomes quiet again. Its armor is more than protection. Each scale is a small fortress of bone, called an osteoderm, fused with nerves and blood vessels. They do not merely defend against teeth or claws. They also absorb heat from the sun, warming the cold-blooded body below. This makes the crocodile a creature of both patience and precision. It can wait for hours in the cool water, then rise to the bank and store sunlight like a living battery. Even its stillness is a form of control. Inside, its lungs are vast compared to its size. They fill most of the chest cavity, and when the crocodile dives, its body adjusts the balance of air within them to control buoyancy. It can sink without a ripple, not by thrashing or fighting gravity, but simply by releasing a little air. Some scientists have called it a master of negative motion, a being that moves most effectively by not moving at all. This balance of air and water gives the crocodile its ghostly calm, a grace that seems too ancient to belong to muscle and bone. When we look at this design, it feels deliberate, as if carved by time itself, with a slow and careful hand. But it was not made in a single moment or a single age. Over millions of years, the forces of nature kept testing and refining it. Predators that thrashed too much wasted energy. Bodies that sat too high cast shadows on the water. Those that failed to balance stealth and strength vanished into extinction, leaving behind only those who could disappear into stillness. The crocodile is the survivor of endless experiments, a quiet perfection that physics itself seems to protect. And yet, what makes this shape extraordinary is not just that it works, but that it works everywhere. Whether in warm rivers, murky swamps, or salty estuaries, the design remains the same. Other creatures across time and ancestry have rediscovered this form as if guided by the same invisible instructions. Different bones, different lineages, yet the same answer to the same question. How does one become a shadow in water? The crocodile's body, from its armored back to its low-slung skull, is more than an animal's frame. It is a record of what the earth itself considers efficient. Its shape is a conversation between gravity, water, and survival. Even its eyes, those small, steady lights above the surface, remind us that watching can be more powerful than chasing. The crocodile teaches that movement is not the only way to master the world around you. Sometimes stillness, when perfected, becomes the most enduring motion of all, and so the crocodile waits, in the shallows, in the dark, beneath layers of time and sediment. The same outline that first slipped through Triassic rivers now glides through the present, unbroken and unchanged. It does not chase evolution. It simply rests inside the blueprint that nature itself keeps remembering, a body shaped by patience, a form the earth has chosen again and again to keep. The story begins in silence, a silence that followed the greatest dying the planet had ever known. About 250 million years ago, the Permian world ended. Volcanoes tore open the crust of the earth for millions of years, flooding the air with ash and poison. Oceans turned sour, forests collapsed, and nearly every form of life vanished. Only 1 in 10 species survived. When the air cleared and the land cooled, the planet stood almost empty, waiting to be filled again. The Triassic dawn rose on a wounded earth. Rivers still steamed from volcanic heat, and strange ferns unfurled across bare plains. Life returned cautiously, reshaping itself from the few survivors that had endured the storm. From these survivors, a new lineage began to rise, creatures that would one day lead to both the thunder of dinosaurs and the patience of crocodiles. They were called the archosaurs, the rulers of the early Triassic. The archosaurs were not yet dinosaurs, nor crocodiles, but something in between. They came in many shapes and sizes: small runners that darted through dry valleys, armored beasts that trudged beside rivers, and tall hunters that ruled with long jaws and deep chested power. In them, the future was still uncertain. One branch would take to the skies, their bones growing hollow and light, and would eventually become birds. Another would stay close to the ground and water, growing heavier, stronger, more deliberate. From that grounded lineage, the idea of the crocodile began to take form. The early world they inhabited was fierce and unstable. The continents were still joined together in one great superland, Pangaea, a vast and lonely stretch of rock and sand surrounded by endless ocean. There were few forests, few places to hide, and the heat could twist the horizon into shimmering waves of mirage. Predators here needed more than strength. They needed endurance, precision, and a body that could endure both drought and flood. Nature began to test its designs. Among the great archosaurs were the Raulsuchians, creatures that looked like crocodiles reborn for a different Earth. They were giants, some stretching more than 6 meters long, with skulls broad and teeth shaped for tearing through flesh. Their backs carried rows of bony plates, and their tails swung low like living weapons. But these were not water dwellers. They walked on tall, pillar-like legs, upright and confident, as if they had borrowed their posture from the future dinosaurs that were still waiting to appear. Their gait was steady, their steps heavy and deliberate, leaving deep footprints in the mud of the Triassic floodplains. Imagine one of these ancient predators in motion. The sun is pale, filtered through dust and haze. The ground trembles softly as it walks, each step pressing into the wet earth beside a shrinking pool. Its eyes, small and gold, fix on a herd of early reptiles drinking at the edge. There is no rush. It waits, half shadowed by the reeds, body still as stone. Then, a burst of movement, a strike swift enough to remind the world that even after catastrophe, life had found new ways to hunt. Though Raulsuchians were built for land, their bodies carried echoes of the water's logic. Their snouts were long and narrow, their teeth curved inward, and their backs held the same protective ridges that crocodiles would later refine. It was as if nature, still learning to rebuild, was already sketching the outlines of a shape that would one day return. In these hunters, the blueprint of patience and stealth first appeared, even if it was expressed in heat and dust rather than still water. But time in the Triassic was brief and restless. Continents shifted, rivers dried, and climates changed faster than species could adapt. The Raulsuchians flourished for a while, spreading across the supercontinent, their bones buried from what is now Argentina to Germany. Yet as the Triassic moved toward its end, they began to fade. Competition from smaller, faster reptiles, the early dinosaurs, began to press them from the land they once ruled. Their upright stance, once a symbol of dominance, became a disadvantage in the changing world. And so, one by one, these giants vanished into the dust of time. But extinction does not erase an idea. Even as the Raulsuchians disappeared, their shape remained in the memory of evolution. Long jaws, armored backs, the balance between stillness and sudden violence, these traits lingered like unfinished thoughts in the mind of the earth. When the first true crocodiles began to emerge millions of years later, they did not start from nothing. They inherited a whisper of what had already been tried. The Triassic world, harsh and uncertain, was a laboratory of beginnings. It gave rise to forms that would echo through ages, testing and refining the body that could move between land and water, between silence and power. In those first rivers after the Great Dying, the planet had already dreamed of the crocodile. It would take many millions of years for that dream to take its final shape, but the design had already been born in heat, in struggle, and in the long patience of a recovering Earth. The Raulsuchians may be gone, their bones scattered through stone and sand, but their influence still drifts beneath every slow-moving river. Every shadow that glides through the water carries a memory of them, of that first attempt when life began to remember what it meant to endure. In the fading warmth of the Triassic world, when the great Raulsuchians had begun to wane, the rivers were still restless. Rain carved new paths through red stone and left behind pools that steamed under the sun. Life, as always, moved into these waters, and in those shallows, a familiar shape began to rise again. Long bodies glided just beneath the surface, broad tails coiled and uncoiled with quiet rhythm. Eyes, patient and unblinking, floated just above the waterline. From a distance, it would have been easy to mistake these creatures for crocodiles, but the world had not yet met its first true crocodile. These were something else entirely, the Phytosaurs, the false crocodiles of the Triassic. They were not ancestors, not even close relatives. Their bloodlines branched away from the true crocodiles long before either had taken form. Yet somehow, through the slow and steady hand of evolution, they found the same answer to the same question: how to rule the water's edge. It was as if nature, still remembering the shape it had once sketched into the bones of the Raulsuchians, decided to try again, this time with creatures that lived between land and water. Phytosaurs were ambushers. They lived in rivers, lakes, and deltas, slipping between the worlds of air and water. Their bodies were long and sleek, armored from snout to tail in a mosaic of bone and scale. Their jaws stretched forward in narrow precision, lined with sharp conical teeth that could hold a thrashing prey without breaking it. Fish, amphibians, and early reptiles were caught in those jaws before they even knew they had been seen. Some species grew as long as 8 meters, their tails propelling them with smooth, powerful strokes. They were hunters built for silence. Yet for all their resemblance to crocodiles, there was one detail that betrayed the illusion. Their nostrils sat not at the tip of the snout, but high on the head, close to the eyes. It was a strange arrangement, and scientists believe it may have allowed them to breathe while most of their snout rested below the water. The design worked, but it was different from the true crocodiles that would come later. In them, the nostrils would migrate forward, letting them breathe even while the entire body, including most of the head, remained hidden. It was a small change, but one that made all the difference. In that shift of bone and airways, the blueprint that had been forming for millions of years finally reached its perfected balance. The Triassic world that nurtured the Phytosaurs was still in recovery, still reshaping itself from the ashes of the great dying. Continents stretched dry and vast, but rivers wound through them like veins, bringing back life. On their banks, early conifers rose beside cycads, and insects glittered in the thick air. It was a time of rebuilding, when ecosystems were fragile but full of promise. And in those waterways, the Phytosaurs reigned for nearly 30 million years. They hunted beside the first dinosaurs, watched strange mammal-like creatures vanish, and ruled the floodplains that would one day belong to others. Their fossils, found today in places like India, Germany, and the southwestern deserts of North America, tell the story of a creature that mastered patience. Some had slender jaws made for catching fish. Others bore thick, broad snouts that could crush through the bones of land animals that came too close to drink. Each species mirrored the same quiet power that future crocodiles would inherit. Yet, no matter how strong or efficient they became, their time was not endless. Near the end of the Triassic, the world changed again. Volcanoes erupted across the supercontinent, darkening the sky with ash. Temperatures swung wildly, rivers dried and returned in sudden floods, and oxygen levels fell. The chain of life that had rebuilt itself after the Great Dying began to strain once more. Amid this chaos, the phytosaurs faltered. Their bodies, so finely tuned to calm and steady rivers, could not endure the violent swings of a shifting planet. One by one, their species vanished from the fossil record, and then, as if on cue, another lineage rose from the shadow of extinction. When the dust of the Triassic settled and the Jurassic dawn began, the first true crocodiles appeared. They moved into the empty rivers as if the water had been waiting for them all along. The niche the phytosaurs once held did not stay vacant for long. Life had already written the pattern, and nature simply followed it again, this time with a design that would last for hundreds of millions of years. The phytosaurs never knew they were prototypes of something greater. To them, their world was complete, their design sufficient. But in the quiet turning of time, they were part of a larger rhythm, a rehearsal of a form the earth was still perfecting. Their bones lie now in stone, older than most mountains, yet their silhouette remains alive in every crocodile that slips through a river's reflection today. They were the first to wear that patient armor, the first to rise from still water with jaws shaped by the logic of survival. And though they are gone, their likeness endures, a reminder that in evolution, even extinction can leave behind a memory strong enough for the planet to try again. When the Triassic world finally began to settle, and the chaos of fire and flood softened into the rhythm of rivers again, life was already busy dividing itself into paths that would shape the future of the earth. From the ashes of the great dying, the archosaurs still walked, those ancient rulers who had outlived disaster and now stood ready to fill the silence left behind. Among them, evolution began to make a choice, one that would split the world between two kinds of survival. One path would rise into the air, the other would learn to wait in still water. The archosaurs were the great experimenters of their age. They carried within them the potential for flight, for ferocity, and for patience. They were not yet dinosaurs or crocodiles, but they already held the seeds of both. Their skeletons tell the story. Strong hips, hollow bones in some species, elongated limbs in others. Nature was testing every combination, shaping life like clay in its hands. The early dinosaurs, light and upright, took to running and chasing. They grew quick, alert, built for the open plains that stretched across Pangaea. Every generation pushed further from the water, relying more on agility than armor. They were the beginning of the air and land lineage, a path that would one day lift into the sky as birds. The other branch took a quieter turn. Its members stayed near the rivers, swamps, and deltas, choosing the shadows instead of the sunlight. They grew lower to the ground, their legs shorter and stronger, their bodies heavier, their lungs deep and patient. While the dinosaurs reached upward, these creatures sank downward, closer to the earth, closer to stillness. They became the keepers of water and silence. From them, the ancestors of crocodiles would emerge. It is a strange symmetry that two of the most successful survivors of that age would come from the same ancient root, yet choose such different worlds. One line became the masters of the sky, the other of the water. One chased the wind, the other watched from beneath it. But both carried the same ancient architecture within their bones, the unmistakable signature of the archosaurs. The split between crocodiles and birds was not sudden. It unfolded slowly, through countless small decisions made by life itself. A change in limb posture here, a shift in metabolism there, a refinement of breath and bone. Evolution does not draw sharp lines. It blurs them until the world quietly rearranges. The archosaur family tree is wide, its branches stretching across time. Some of its cousins vanished without descendants. Some learned to glide or swim, others to sprint or roar. Yet two lines endured, carrying the memory of that early world all the way to the present. The first took to the skies, evolving feathers and hollow bones, refining the rhythm of flight until it became song. The second sank into the water's edge, keeping its armor and strength, finding power in patience. To understand how they diverged, one must look at how they breathed. Birds developed a remarkable system of air sacs that allowed a continuous flow of oxygen through their lungs, keeping them light and tireless in the air. Crocodiles, though heavier and colder in movement, kept a similar flow, a unidirectional breath that passes through their lungs in one direction, like a river current that never reverses. Both share this rare efficiency inherited from their shared ancestors. It is as if evolution preserved the same tool, letting each shape it for a different world. The bones tell the same story. If you place a crocodile's skull beside that of a bird, the resemblance is faint but undeniable. The same sockets, the same arrangement of openings for muscles and nerves, the same rhythm of structure repeating through time. Even their eggs, hard-shelled and delicate, share the same quiet geometry of life beginning in calcium. Every detail whispers of a long and shared beginning. In the long view of time, it seems almost poetic that these two survivors, born from the same origin, would come to embody opposite ends of nature's design. Birds became creatures of constant motion, their lives measured by heartbeats and migration. Crocodiles became the masters of stillness, their lives stretched long and slow, measured not by years, but by the rise and fall of rivers. One lives in the rhythm of the sky, the other in the patience of the water. Both endure. Even now, the balance continues. Above the swamps, herons and storks glide in slow circles, descendants of those first sky-bound archosaurs. Below them, a crocodile drifts with the same calm its ancestors carried through the Triassic. Their paths no longer cross in conflict. Instead, they form a quiet harmony, two expressions of the same beginning, separated by millions of years, yet still bound by the logic of life. And so, from a single ancient family, the Earth learned two lessons. One, that survival can be found in movement, in chasing the wind until the bones themselves grow hollow. And the other, that survival can also be found in stillness, in waiting so perfectly that the world moves around you. Both lessons endure, side by side, just as their teachers do. The crocodile and the bird, cousins born from the same memory of stone and water. There was a time when the ocean belonged to reptiles, not the slow drift of sea turtles or the gentle glide of modern crocodiles, but a kingdom ruled by predators built for the deep. Long after the first crocodiles had found their rhythm in rivers and swamps, some of their kin turned away from the still waters and followed the currents outward toward the open sea. The shore became a memory, and the salt became home. These were the metrioranchids, the ocean-going crocodiles. They began their journey in the late Jurassic seas, around 160 million years ago, when the continents were still close and the waters between them shimmered with life. Fish were plentiful, ammonites spiraled through the waves, and giant marine reptiles like ichthyosaurs and plesiosaurs hunted in the blue depths. It was a world of predators, each adapted to a different shape of motion. And into this crowded stage came creatures that looked, at first glance, like crocodiles, until they began to swim. Metriorhynchus and Dacosaurus were among the strangest of their kind. Their ancestors had once moved through muddy rivers and shallow lagoons, pushing with clawed feet and sweeping tails. But as generations passed, those limbs changed. The toes fused together, the claws disappeared, and broad flippers formed in their place. The tail, once flat and muscular like a paddle, grew a deep vertical fin, curved like that of a shark. The body stretched sleek and narrow, built not for hiding in water but for cutting through it. These were not crocodiles who swam reluctantly. They were swimmers by birth, masters of motion beneath the waves. Their fossils, found in stone cliffs across Europe and South America, revealed just how far they had drifted from their freshwater cousins. The bones of Metriorhynchus show smooth skin impressions without the heavy armor that once covered their ancestors. Their scales had thinned to reduce drag. The skeleton's long ribs wrapped tightly around a streamlined body, and their front limbs had become perfect hydrofoils. The snout was long and filled with needle-shaped teeth, ideal for spearing fish. Even the shape of their skulls showed the mark of evolution's sculpting hand, light, aerodynamic, and precise. Dacosaurus, on the other hand, was the bruiser of the seas. Its snout was shorter and broader, the teeth larger and serrated like those of a great white shark. Where Metriorhynchus chased fish and squid, Dacosaurus hunted larger prey, perhaps even other marine reptiles. It was called the Godzilla crocodile by modern paleontologists, though it lived long before such words existed, in a world ruled only by the tides. For all their differences, these marine crocodiles shared one secret adaptation that allowed them to thrive in salt water. Fossils reveal small cavities in their skulls where special glands once sat, salt glands, much like those found in modern seabirds and sea snakes. Through them, the animals could excrete excess salt, keeping their blood balanced even as they drank and hunted in the ocean. It was a perfect design for a life without rivers. Their lungs, large and efficient, let them hold their breath for long minutes while diving. Their tails propelled them like living arrows through the ancient seas, gliding silently beneath schools of fish that never saw them coming. But perfection is always borrowed time. The oceans of the Jurassic were kind to them, yet the world was never still. By the end of the period, climates shifted, coastlines changed, and new competitors appeared. Ichthyosaurs, with their dolphin-like speed, ruled the open water. Plesiosaurs, with long necks and massive flippers, claimed the shallows. Even sharks began to grow larger, faster, and more efficient. The Metriorhynchids, caught between worlds, slowly began to fade. Their once diverse family shrank to fewer and fewer species, until the last of them vanished from the fossil record. About 130 million years ago, when they disappeared, the ocean did not mourn them. It simply forgot. The sea has always been quick to erase its memories. The bones of those crocodiles settled into silt and coral, pressed flat by the weight of time, their outlines faint as whispers in the stone. For millions of years, nothing like them returned. Crocodiles that remained on land and in rivers continued their story quietly, surviving through extinction and climate and the rise of mammals. The sea, once theirs, belonged to others. Yet if one looks closely at their fossils today, at the curve of a flipper or the arc of a tail fin, it becomes clear that their story is still part of a larger pattern. They were not failures, only one of nature's many experiments in the language of form. Their bodies spoke the same physics as dolphins and sharks and the ichthyosaurs that swam beside them. Different lineages, same solutions. The ocean rewarded the same answers, again and again, sculpting muscle and bone into the shapes that water loves most. The Metriorhynchids may be gone, but their reflection lingers. Each time a crocodile slides into a river, it carries a trace of that ancient instinct, the pull of salt and open space written somewhere deep in its blood. The sea once shaped them, and perhaps in some small way, it still calls to them through the tide's endless rhythm. Long ago, they followed that call into the deep, traded their claws for fins, and became something the world has never seen again. And though the ocean forgot their names, the earth remembers their shape, etched forever into the quiet stone beneath the waves. In the slow rhythm of rivers and deltas, where the water moves like breath drawn in and released again, there waits a shape that has outlasted ages. It does not chase, it does not hurry. It simply waits for the world to come close enough to meet it. For hundreds of millions of years, the crocodile has survived not because it runs faster or strikes harder than other predators, but because it wastes almost nothing. It has perfected the balance between motion and stillness, between hunger and patience. Every muscle, every bone, every breath follows the physics of quiet efficiency. In the story of life, where most creatures win by doing more, the crocodile endures by doing less. Its body is an engine built for waiting. When a crocodile drifts through the water, it moves with such subtlety that even the ripples seem unsure whether something has passed. Its tail does most of the work, pressing against the water in wide, slow waves. The limbs remain tucked in, close to the body, conserving energy. Its skin, patterned with ridges and scales, breaks up the reflection of the surface, scattering light so that the creature disappears into its own surroundings. What looks like stillness is in fact a perfect equilibrium between physics and instinct. The energy cost of hunting defines the fate of every predator. For a cheetah, the price of a single chase is immense, and every failure carries the weight of exhaustion. For a crocodile, that balance tips the other way. It can go weeks without feeding, even months if it must, storing energy deep within its tissues. When it moves, it does so with purpose. Every twitch of the tail, every quiet glide toward the shallows is measured and necessary. The crocodile's strength is not in speed, but in control. The physics of stealth favor creatures that understand water. Water magnifies motion, turns every disturbance into a signal. To move unseen beneath it, a predator must learn the language of pressure and flow. The crocodile's long, low body allows it to displace water evenly as it swims. Its nostrils and eyes rest just above the surface, letting it breathe and see without breaking the mirror of reflection. It senses vibrations through the bones of its skull, through the nerves in its jaw, even through the ripples that reach its armored back. The world around it speaks in tremors and pulses, and the crocodile listens. Scientists studying their movement have found that crocodiles create some of the smallest surface disturbances of any large predator. When they approach prey, the water ahead of them remains almost perfectly smooth. It is a mastery not of speed, but of silence. A hunt might take hours. They may wait half submerged, while herons wade or deer come to drink, their patience unbroken by time or hunger. And then, in a single instant, the stillness collapses. A burst of movement, a surge of water, a sound like a stone striking the surface. The strike is not violent by design, but inevitable. The equation has reached its answer. This way of life, built on waiting, is what biologists call ambush predation. It appears again and again throughout the history of evolution across species that share nothing but the same physics. Spiders weave their webs and wait for air to bring them food. Anglerfish dangle false lures in the blackness of the deep. Praying mantises rock gently in the wind until the moment comes. The crocodile is simply the oldest of them, the living emblem of the ambush principle. In the mathematics of survival, ambush hunting often beats pursuit. It requires less energy, fewer mistakes, and a deeper understanding of the environment. The trade is time. For the crocodile, time is abundant. Its heartbeat slows underwater to a few beats per minute. Its body temperature adjusts to match the surrounding air. Even its metabolism seems to sink into the same stillness as the river. While other creatures race against hunger, the crocodile drifts through it, patient as stone. To call it perfect is not a compliment but a description. In ecology, perfection means balance, a design so efficient that it resists change. Over millions of years, nature has remade this pattern many times, even in creatures unrelated to crocodiles. In the Triassic, the Phytosaurs shaped themselves the same way. Later, in the Cretaceous, marine reptiles and even mammals echoed the same silhouette. Flat body, streamlined skull, the gaze just above the waterline. Each time, evolution found its way back to the same equation, the form of waiting. Patience in the natural world is not a quiet virtue but a weapon. Where movement draws attention, stillness hides it. Where hunger drives others to exhaustion, restraint preserves strength. The crocodile survives not because it dominates, but because it endures. Its design is an argument written in flesh, one that says energy is life and waste is death. Even now, in the slow twilight of rivers across the world, the lesson continues. A log drifts near the surface, but beneath it, something watches. The water trembles once, then stills again. The predator is not chasing time or prey. It is waiting for both to come to it. And in that patience lies the secret that nature has never stopped remembering. In the heart of what is now the Sahara Desert, beneath dunes that shimmer with unbearable heat, lie the bones of a world that once moved to the rhythm of rivers. Long before the desert took shape, this place was a floodplain, a green labyrinth of lakes and slow-moving water that stretched as far as the horizon. It was filled with life. There were fish the size of cars, turtles that could swallow a human whole, and on the banks, young dinosaurs walked cautiously between the reeds. And waiting there, half submerged, was a shadow that dwarfed them all. Its name, given much later by human hands, was Sarcosuchus imperator, the flesh crocodile. But to the creatures that lived beside it, it was not a name, only a presence, a force of nature that owned the river. It stretched more than 12 meters from snout to tail, heavier than an elephant, its body sheathed in armor so thick that sunlight glinted off the ridges of its back like wet stone. Its jaws were long and narrow, lined with over 100 teeth, each one curved for gripping rather than slicing. When it opened its mouth, it could hold a small dinosaur between its jaws as easily as a fish. The fossils of Sarcosuchus were first uncovered in the mid-20th century by paleontologists exploring the ancient riverbeds of what is now Niger. What they found was astonishing, not only because of the size, but because of what those bones revealed about the world that shaped it. The Sahara, now a landscape of wind and silence, was once a vast and fertile basin. Seasonal rains fed great rivers that wound through forests and swamps. The sediment that buried Sarcosuchus was rich with the remains of plants and animals that spoke of a tropical paradise. The bones tell the story of a time when this desert was alive with sound. Sarcosuchus was not a creature of speed. It did not chase, it waited. It lived as the master of ambush, using the same patience that had guided crocodiles for millions of years. But this was patience on another scale. Hidden in the water, it watched the edge of the riverbank for vibrations, for the footfalls of dinosaurs coming to drink. Its nostrils, set high on the snout, allowed it to breathe, while almost the entire body rested below the surface. Only the eyes, small and dark, betrayed its presence, reflecting the light like twin stars in the green water. When it struck, the world changed sound. A sudden rush of water, a single violent motion, and then silence again. No struggle lasted long. Its jaws were built not just for strength but for crushing. The upper and lower parts of its skull met in a curve that allowed tremendous pressure. A dinosaur leg or a thick carapace would have shattered beneath that bite. It could take down prey that no modern crocodile could imagine, creatures that stood taller than itself. Yet even this giant was not beyond the reach of time. The lush rivers of the Sahara began to dry as the climate changed. The once steady monsoon patterns shifted and the forests retreated. The great river systems that had nourished life across northern Africa turned into isolated channels, then lakes, then dust. Sarcosuchus, so perfectly adapted to its watery domain, found the world shrinking around it. As the rivers vanished, so did the creature that had ruled them. Its extinction was not sudden, it faded with the landscape, slowly and quietly, like water receding after a flood. What had once been an empire of stillness became a desert of wind, and beneath that sand, the bones of the supercroc rested, a fossil reminder of a time when giants lay beneath green waters and the earth breathed a different air. Sarcosuchus was not the largest predator that ever lived, but it represented something more profound. It was the peak expression of a design that evolution had been refining for hundreds of millions of years, the crocodile form taken to its extreme, where smaller crocodilians relied on patience, stealth. Sarcosuchus added overwhelming size and power. Its body was not only a hunter's tool but an answer to the abundance of its time. In a world rich with prey, size became its strength, but as that world changed, the same size became its weakness. In the bones of Sarcosuchus, scientists read the dialogue between evolution and climate. Its immense skull shows how predators grow to fit the opportunities of their environment. Its disappearance shows how even the mightiest designs can vanish when the world turns away from them. The shape itself survived, smaller, lighter, more adaptable. But the age of the supercroc ended when the rivers died. Today, the wind that sweeps across the Sahara carries grains of sand that once flowed as water. Beneath them lie fossils that remember the cool touch of those ancient rivers. Each one is a memory of balance, between strength and stillness, between power and patience. Sarcosuchus was not a mistake of scale, but a reflection of what the earth allowed for a time. It was the proof that nature, when given space and warmth, can fill the world with giants. And when that space is gone, it takes them gently back into the stone, leaving only the shape of their perfection behind. The world that came after the supercroc was quieter. The great rivers that once shimmered through the heart of ancient Africa had long since shifted, and new continents were rising from the sea. By the time South America broke free and began its slow drift westward, it carried with it a new generation of predators. Among them was a creature that seemed both familiar and strange, shaped like a crocodile, yet made for the land. It was called Borasuchus, the land crocodile of the Cretaceous. Its bones were first uncovered in the red rocks of Brazil, in sediments that once held winding streams and dry plains. At first glance, it looked like a small version of the crocodiles we know today. It had the same long snout, the same armored skin, the same sharp teeth that could tear through flesh. But this was not a river ambusher. This was a hunter that walked on land, beneath the hot, unbroken sun. The legs of Borasuchus were not sprawled out to the sides like those of a modern probus crocodile. They were positioned directly beneath the body, lifting it higher from the ground, allowing it to run with a bounding, confident stride. It moved not with the slow drag of a swamp dweller, but with the poise of a predator that chased its prey over open ground. Each step left deep, rounded footprints in the soil, prints that tell us this creature carried its weight on strong, muscular limbs built for speed. Its skull was shaped for force, not stealth. The bones were thick, the jaws deep, and the muscles that powered its bite wrapped tightly around its head like cords of iron. In life, its jaw strength would have rivaled or exceeded that of many large mammals that came millions of years later. The teeth were conical but slightly flattened along the sides, creating edges that could shear through bone and sinew. A single strike could crush the skull of smaller animals or snap a limb in half. This was no river trapper. It was a land hunter, made for direct confrontation. Inside that predatory body, something even more unusual stirred. The bones of Borasuchus show evidence of rapid growth, dense blood vessel channels, and structures suggesting a metabolism far more active than that of modern reptiles. Some scientists believe it was at least partly warm-blooded, capable of generating its own heat, rather than relying entirely on the sun. If true, this would place Borasuchus in a rare position between two worlds, cold-blooded reptiles and warm-blooded mammals. It was a creature caught in transition, walking the edge of two evolutionary strategies. Its eyes faced forward, giving it depth perception. Its limbs supported it like those of a wolf or a lion. Even its skull shape, broad at the back and narrow at the snout, carried echoes of later mammalian carnivores. It was as if evolution had borrowed familiar parts from one lineage to test how they might work in another. The result was a predator that looked like a crocodile but behaved like something far more dynamic. In the ecosystems of ancient South America, Borasuchus held the role that big cats and wolves hold today. It hunted small dinosaurs, early mammals, and any creature that crossed its path. Its senses were sharp, its movements efficient, and its endurance unmatched among its kin. While most crocodiles lay in wait near water, Borasuchus claimed the dry ground, the savanna-like stretches between rivers. It stood as proof that even a lineage built for patience could learn the art of pursuit. The world it lived in was a patchwork of extremes. Dry seasons baked the earth into cracked clay. Rainfall returned in violent bursts, flooding the lowlands and painting them green with temporary life. In this unstable land, adaptability was everything, and Borasuchus embodied it, a crocodilian that had learned to thrive in the shifting middle ground between elements. Nature, it seems, does not obey the borders we draw between water and land, reptile and mammal, cold and warm. Across time, it keeps weaving those lines together, creating creatures that belong to both sides at once. The crocodile that walked on land was one of those bridges. It carried within it the patience of its aquatic ancestors, but its body had been rewritten by the demands of a harsher, faster world. And while Borasuchus would eventually disappear, replaced by newer predators with lighter bones and keener senses, it left behind a reminder that form and function are never fixed. Even a shape as ancient and proven as the crocodile can be reborn in unexpected ways. The earth, it seems, does not forget its favorite blueprints. It only reshapes them, molding the same strength into new stories, each one adapted to a different rhythm of survival. Somewhere beneath the stone fields of Brazil, its bones still lie curled where water once passed long ago. The prints it left on the ancient earth have hardened into stone, yet their message remains soft and timeless. Life, they whisper, does not stay still. Even the quiet ones, the watchers and the patient, can learn to run when the world invites them to. Across the deep history of Earth, crocodiles have always belonged to the edges of rivers, the edges of oceans, the edges between life and stillness. Through every age, wherever water and land met, their shadows followed, and in those shifting boundaries, the world itself began to shape them, just as they shaped the world in return. If you could walk along the banks of a Triassic floodplain, you would not recognize the landscape as Earth. The air would feel heavier, the light tinted red by the haze of volcanic dust that still drifted from the wounds of a restless planet. The ground would tremble now and then, as if the earth itself was still stretching its bones. Yet, even in that young and unsettled world, rivers flowed. Wide and slow, they wandered through forests of ferns and horsetail reeds that swayed above pools of clay-colored water. There, the first crocodile-like creatures waited. Their ancestors, the ancient crocodilomorphs, lay in quiet ambush beneath the murk, just as their descendants would one day do. Those early floodplains were rich with amphibians and reptiles, creatures that had only recently begun to recover from the great dying. The rivers brought nutrients and silt, and life gathered wherever the water lingered longest. Each new rainy season spread the same silent message that survival belonged to those who could endure both flood and drought. Crocodilomorphs became the masters of that rhythm, living in the still water left behind when the rains withdrew. Their patience made them part of the landscape itself. In time, their waiting carved the behavior of the animals around them. Fish darted differently. Small reptiles learned to drink quickly, always glancing toward the quiet pools. Even in the Triassic, long before true crocodiles appeared, they were already sculpting the silence of the world around them. When the Cretaceous arrived, the planet had grown more generous. Forests of cycads and palms reached toward the sun. The air carried the calls of dinosaurs and the hum of insects that filled the canopy above. The rivers were wider now, fed by monsoon rains that swept across the continents. Here, crocodiles reached their golden age. In the low, green swamps and deltas, they ruled unseen. They shared these waters with herds of duck-billed dinosaurs and flocks of pterosaurs that skimmed across the surface like ghosts. And beneath it all, the still eyes of the crocodiles watched from the shallows as they always had. In these ancient wetlands, crocodiles became more than hunters. They became engineers of stillness. Their trails carved paths through reeds that channeled the flow of water. Their burrows opened into the banks and provided shelter for other animals when the dry season returned. Even the act of their movement shaped the land, stirring silt that carried nutrients, deepening channels that helped the floodwaters spread evenly across the plains. In their patience, they built balance. Each river and swamp that held them became a quieter place, governed by unseen rules written in the curve of their movements. When the Miocene dawned, long after the age of dinosaurs had ended, the world had taken on a more familiar shape. Grasslands spread across continents, and great rivers carved through them. Forests thickened near the equator, and the crocodiles adapted again. Now they shared their world with early elephants, with giant apes, and with mammals that had inherited the earth. In South America, monstrous species like Phytosaurs patrolled the ancient Amazon basin, their enormous tails sweeping through the brown water as flocks of birds took to the sky in alarm. In Africa, the ancestors of the Nile crocodile glided beneath the same surface where hippos now bathed, their lineage unbroken through the quiet turning of time. Each ecosystem that carried crocodiles carried their influence as well. In the Miocene, the great rivers they haunted shaped migration patterns. Animals learned the edges of safety, the places where reflection and ripple meant danger. Predators that hunted near the water had to adapt to their presence, learning to share an ancient territory with something that did not need to move to hunt. Even the rivers themselves bore their marks. Channels deepened where they gathered, and the flow of sediment shifted around their basking grounds. They were the keepers of balance, silent and uncelebrated, yet integral to every world that remembered them. Across ages, from the red mud of the Triassic to the green floods of the Miocene, the crocodile and its kin remained constant. They watched forests grow and vanish, mountains rise and erode, climates warm and cool. Through all of it, their shape endured, refined only slightly by the passage of time. They did not conquer the earth through expansion or innovation, but through stillness. Wherever there was water, they waited, and wherever they waited, the earth adjusted to their rhythm. The lost worlds of crocodiles are gone now, buried beneath deserts and jungles, but their presence remains etched in the bones of the land. The riverbeds that lie dry beneath the Sahara once held them. The cliffs of South America once echoed with their splashes. Even now, the rivers that survive seem to remember them, slow in their curves, deep in their bends, and quiet in their flow. Every landscape that built them has vanished into history, yet they themselves remain unchanged and eternal. Perhaps this is their greatest legacy. Not that they ruled, but that they belonged so deeply to every place they touched that the earth itself seems quieter in their company. The Triassic floodplains, the Cretaceous swamps, the Miocene rivers, all are gone, but their silence remains, carried forward in every ripple where eyes rise just above the water, and the ancient patience of the crocodile waits, as it always has. The deserts of deep time were not always empty. Before the first dunes whispered under the wind, long before the modern sands of the Sahara or Kalahari ever formed, there were other drylands, vast plains of dust and stone, rimmed by shrinking rivers and broken forests. And even here, far from the comfort of water, the crocodile shape found its way back into being. It seems impossible at first. How could a creature built for the silence of rivers thrive in a place without them? Yet the bones tell the story clearly. Through the ages, life has carved that same low, armored form again and again, not only in swamps and deltas, but in the heart of the desert itself. They were not true crocodiles, though they wore the same armor and carried the same stillness in their bones. They were the false crocodiles of the dry world, Phobosuchus, Postosuchus, and Caprosuchus, each one an echo, each one a separate experiment in survival. Long before the true crocodiles claimed the rivers, during the late Triassic, Postosuchus ruled the floodplains of what is now North America. Its name means crocodile from Post, after the Texas town where its fossils were first found. But it was not bound to rivers or lakes. It was a walker of open ground, a land predator shaped by heat and scarcity. It stood tall on long, muscular legs, its body lifted well above the ground. Unlike modern crocodiles that crawl or glide, Postosuchus walked with the gait of a hunter, its hips swinging with quiet strength. The skull was long and narrow, armed with teeth like sharpened knives, built for tearing into the flesh of the early dinosaurs that wandered the plains beside it. Its armor was thick, patterned in rows of bony plates called osteoderms that ran from neck to tail. These plates shimmered in the Triassic light like dull bronze, absorbing the heat of the day and releasing it slowly at night. It was a body tuned not for patience in water, but for endurance on land, a crocodile that breathed dust instead of humidity, that waited not beneath ripples but behind stone. Millions of years later, the deserts of the Cretaceous gave rise to another strange reflection of the crocodile's design. In the baked sands of ancient Africa lived Caprosuchus, the boar crocodile. Its skull, when unearthed in the Sahara, startled paleontologists. Its jaws were lined with enormous tusk-like teeth that curved outward like those of a wild boar, and deep ridges ran along its snout, giving it the face of something caught between reptile and mammal. It was smaller than Postosuchus, but faster, its limbs strong and compact, made for sudden, lunging attacks. Fossil evidence shows that Caprosuchus could run, truly run, with its legs directly beneath its body. It hunted not by ambush in water, but by silence in dust, waiting near the shade of rock or the edge of a dry gully where herds of small dinosaurs passed. When it struck, it lunged forward with a burst of power that left only a trail of disturbed sand behind. Its bite was crushing, the tusks locking into flesh like iron hooks. And when the kill was done, it dragged its prize to shelter, just as crocodiles drag their prey to the river's edge. The third of these ancient shadows, Phobosuchus, came later still. It lived near the end of the Cretaceous, in floodplains that were slowly turning to dry savannas. Its name means terrifying crocodile, and by all accounts, it earned it. It could grow longer than 10 meters, rivaling the size of Sarcosuchus, yet it carried itself as a land ambusher. It hid in shallow gullies and underbrush, waiting for the passing of young herbivorous dinosaurs. Its weight sank lightly into the earth, its eyes half closed against the glare of the sun. Even without the shelter of water, it had learned the art of stillness. Across these different landscapes, the dry Triassic plains of Phytosaurs, the Saharan heat of Crocodiles, the parched savannas of Phobosuchus, the same skeletal pattern repeated: the long snout, the heavy tail, the rows of armored plates running down the back, the eyes positioned high, always alert, always watching. Each one lived in a different time, on a different continent, yet all found the same solution to survival. Different beginnings, same outcome. Convergent evolution, written once more in scales and bone. Scientists sometimes call these creatures examples of ecological memory, shapes that the earth reuses when the same challenges appear again. When prey becomes scarce and water grows thin, when heat and distance demand efficiency and precision, life returns to this design: low to the ground, armored, patient, strong. It is the shape of endurance itself. To imagine them now is to picture silence broken only by the wind, a shadow moving between stones, its steps muffled by dust, the gleam of sunlight across armored skin. In that instant, it is easy to forget that what we are seeing is not a true crocodile, but the memory of one, a reflection the planet kept rediscovering as if unwilling to let the design fade completely. And though their worlds have vanished into the quiet layers of stone, their outlines remain clear in the fossil record. From desert to floodplain, from drought to rain, the crocodile's shape has never belonged only to the water. It belongs to time itself, resurfacing whenever the earth remembers how to make patience into power and stillness into survival. There are moments, just before dusk, when the river begins to hold its breath, the air cools, the insects fall quiet, and from the still water, a pair of eyes rises into view. They do not blink, they do not waver, they simply watch. To look into the eyes of a crocodile is to glimpse something ancient and deliberate. They are not the flat, vacant eyes of a creature that acts without thought. They are instruments, refined through hundreds of millions of years, made not just for seeing but for knowing, for reading the faintest ripples, the shimmer of movement, the fragile difference between silence and the moment before action. A crocodile's eye is a masterpiece of evolution, sculpted for a life balanced between light and darkness, between air and water. When sunlight falls across it, the vertical pupil contracts to a thin slit, protecting the sensitive inner tissues from glare while preserving depth and detail. When night arrives, the same pupil widens until it fills almost the entire surface of the eye, gathering every fragment of reflected starlight. In the dim glow of twilight, these eyes shine back with a quiet, ghostly radiance, a reflection from a layer of tissue called the tapetum lucidum. This mirror-like surface sits behind the retina, bouncing stray light back through the eye a second time, allowing the crocodile to see where others would be blind. But the brilliance of their vision does not stop at the surface. When the crocodile slips beneath the water, another mechanism takes over. A thin, transparent lid, the nictitating membrane, glides across the eye like a second eyelid. It seals tightly, protecting the sensitive cornea from mud and debris, yet remains clear enough for the animal to see. Through it, the underwater world becomes a muted blur of green and gold. The crocodile no longer sees with sharpness, but with purpose, enough to track the glint of scales or the tremor of a shadow passing overhead. Every sense merges into one long moment of patience. Scientists studying crocodile vision have discovered how precisely their eyes are tuned to the world they inhabit. Their lenses adjust not only for focus, but for the way light bends at the surface of water. In air, the lens flattens to capture distance. Underwater, it thickens, compensating for the different refraction of light through liquid. The transition is seamless, a quiet recalibration that allows the crocodile to watch its world without breaking stillness. Even the shape of the eye, large, rounded, slightly raised above the skull, serves a purpose. It lets the animal remain almost completely hidden, its gaze steady while the rest of its body disappears into the current. In this way, the crocodile's eye becomes not just a tool of hunting, but of existence. It is a window through which time itself can be measured, the still waiting before movement, the distance between predator and prey, the space where survival depends on sight and silence. When it looks upon the world, it does so with the same calm that shaped its species. It has no need for rush or panic. It has already seen everything before. Other hunters, far removed in lineage and form, share this same design. The vertical pupil, narrow and precise, appears again and again across the tapestry of life. In the slit-eyed gaze of cats that stalk the savanna, in the slow, triangular eyes of a praying mantis waiting in the wind, even in the alien shimmer of a cuttlefish hovering in the deep, different worlds, different bodies, yet the same quiet principle repeats, patience made visible. Each of these predators shares the same challenge, to balance awareness with concealment. Their vision must pierce the veil of motion without betraying their presence. Evolution has answered this challenge in nearly identical ways, sculpting eyes that can open to the dark and close to the light, that can judge distance through a narrow beam, and that can hold, focus, even when the rest of the body is utterly still. It is one of nature's most elegant convergences, the same idea emerging through creatures separated by oceans and eons. What makes the crocodile's gaze so captivating is not simply its design, but its quiet depth. When you see those eyes glint just above the water, you are looking at a vision that has remained unchanged since the first forests rose from the earth. Through those eyes, the same light that once touched the faces of dinosaurs still passes, bending through the same lenses, reflecting from the same mirrored tissue. It is not the stare of coldness, but of memory, the slow awareness of a creature that has watched the world transform, yet has never needed to change with it. Perhaps that is why so many who have met this gaze speak of unease. It is not fear of the predator, but recognition. In that stillness lies something ancient, something that remembers the rhythm of life before we began to measure it. The crocodile's eye is not simply a watcher of prey. It is the keeper of time's reflection, a small, steady reminder that nature's finest inventions are often those that do not move at all. And as the last light fades across the river, those eyes will close, the nictitating membrane sliding over them like drawn curtains. The surface of the water will smooth again, the ripples fade, and the world will return to silence. Yet somewhere beneath that calm, the same eyes will open once more, waiting patiently in the dark, as they have for more than 200 million years. 66 million years ago, the world ended in a single day. The Cretaceous had been an age of life's abundance, a time when forests stretched from pole to pole, when the seas shimmered with reptiles and fish, and the land shook beneath the feet of giants. But somewhere beyond the clouds, a rock larger than any mountain hurtled toward the earth. It struck near what is now the Yucatan Peninsula, and the impact turned morning into fire. The explosion lit the sky brighter than the sun. Shockwaves raced through the air faster than sound, flattening forests thousands of kilometers away. A wall of water rose from the ocean, higher than any wave before or since, sweeping over the coasts. And then came the heat, a global furnace as dust and ash fell back through the atmosphere, igniting the surface of the world. For days, perhaps weeks, the earth burned. After the fires came the dark. Ash and soot thickened the skies, turning the planet's warmth into cold. The sun vanished behind a curtain of dust, and the temperature dropped faster than life could adapt. Photosynthesis stopped. plants withered, the creatures that depended on them starved, and then those that depended on the herbivores followed. It was not a single extinction, but a chain of them, a slow collapse of everything that lived and breathed. 3 out of every 4 species vanished. The great dinosaurs that had ruled the continents were among them. Even the seas, which had always been the refuge of life, turned to silence as marine reptiles and plankton disappeared. The air grew thin, the rain turned acid, and the world entered a winter of ash. And yet, when the light finally began to return, when the first green shoots pushed through the soot, something familiar stirred beside the rivers. Eyes broke the surface of the water, quiet and watchful. A long body glided through the murk. The crocodiles had survived. Their endurance seems impossible. How could creatures that shared the same world as the dinosaurs endure the same firestorm and famine that destroyed them? For decades, scientists have searched for the secret of their survival, and though no single answer exists, the clues lie hidden within the quiet logic of their design. The crocodile is not a creature that depends on plenty. Its body, built for patience, requires very little to endure. Where other predators must hunt daily to fuel their fast hearts, a crocodile can slow its heartbeat to just a few beats per minute. It can go weeks without eating, even months if it must, drifting in still water or burying itself in mud to wait out scarcity. When the asteroid struck and the world grew cold, this low metabolism became its shield. While others starved, the crocodile rested. Stillness, once merely a hunting strategy, became a way to survive apocalypse. Its amphibious nature also gave it refuge. When the land burned and the air turned toxic, the rivers remained, deep and protective. Even in darkness, some warmth lingered beneath the surface, enough for life to hold on. There, crocodiles could sink into the sediment, half asleep, their lungs and blood built to survive long periods without oxygen. When the skies were poisoned, they waited below them. When the surface froze, they endured within the water's quiet memory of heat. And perhaps most importantly, they were not picky. When food became scarce, crocodiles could eat almost anything: fish, carrion, even the bones of what had fallen. They were scavengers as much as hunters. This flexibility, this lack of pride and hunger, allowed them to feed when others could not. The world had grown poor, but they were rich in patience. In this way, the crocodile's victory was not born from power or cleverness, but from restraint. While the age of giants demanded constant motion, constant feeding, the crocodile mastered the opposite art. It thrived by waiting, by doing less, by yielding to the rhythm of survival that favored those who could pause when the world demanded silence. When the dust of the asteroid finally settled, the Earth was a quieter place. The great forests were gone, the seas were shallower, the air colder, but the rivers still moved. And in those rivers, the crocodiles moved with them. Generation by generation, they adapted to the new world, growing smaller, lighter, fitting themselves into the narrow spaces that life had left behind. Every extinction leaves behind a lesson, written not in words but in survival. The dinosaurs taught that strength and size cannot protect against sudden change. The crocodiles taught something gentler, that endurance belongs to those who can live within stillness. The earth reshaped itself, but they did not need to follow it. They already knew how to outwait catastrophe. Today, when one watches a crocodile rest at the edge of a river, eyes just above the surface, it is easy to mistake its quiet for idleness. But behind that stillness lies a lineage that has weathered the fall of worlds. Every slow blink, every careful breath carries the echo of a time when the planet nearly stopped breathing altogether, and through it all, they remained. In the end, it was not power or speed or cunning that saved them. It was stillness, the most underestimated force of all. The patience to wait through darkness, the calm to endure disaster, the wisdom, written into their bones, that when the world burns and freezes, survival does not belong to those who move first, but to those who can remain. When the age of dinosaurs ended, the world did not go quiet for long. The fires faded, the ash settled, and slowly green began to return. Ferns crept across the blackened ground, rivers found their courses again, and from the silence of extinction, new sounds began to rise, the footsteps of mammals, the flutter of birds, and the soft rush of wind over young grasslands. But beneath that new rhythm, another shape still lingered in the shadows of the water, a shape that the earth had never forgotten. Crocodiles had survived the great extinction, and in the millions of years that followed, they grew into giants once more. The world that came after the dinosaurs was theirs to claim. The rivers of the Paleocene and Eocene were wide and full of life, and in the warmth of the tropics, crocodiles flourished as if nothing had changed. They adapted, diversified, and spread again across continents, from Asia to South America, from Africa to the newborn wetlands of North America, and among them rose two of the most powerful crocodilians the planet has ever seen, Phytosaurs and Dinosuchus. Their kingdoms were separated by time and ocean, yet both carried the same ancient authority. Dinosuchus appeared first, in the fading years of the Cretaceous, surviving into the new age that dawned after. Its name means terrible crocodile, and its body lived up to the title. It stretched more than 10 meters in length, with a skull as large as a small car and teeth like thick daggers, each one designed to pierce the armor of dinosaurs. Even after their great reptilian prey vanished, Dinosuchus endured, feeding on the new life that filled the waters. Early mammals, giant turtles, and even the occasional marine reptile fell victim to its silent ambush. Fossils from the coastal plains of North America show that these crocodiles ruled the estuaries, lying motionless in the brackish water until something unfortunate came too close. The rivers and deltas they dominated were alive with change. The first broad-leaved forests spread along the water's edge, and the air carried the smell of rot and bloom, of life constantly renewing itself. In that living corridor between land and water, Deinosuchus waited, and every creature that drank, hunted, or crossed the current learned the same lesson, that the world's most ancient design was still watching. Many millions of years later, on another continent and beneath another sun, Phytosaurus took its place as the heir to that legacy. It lived in the Miocene, in a South America that looked both familiar and alien. The Amazon basin was not yet the endless rainforest we know, but a sprawling network of lakes, swamps, and rivers that formed the Pebas system, a watery world that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. There, Phytosaurus reigned as the undisputed monarch of the rivers. It grew even larger than Deinosuchus, reaching nearly 13 meters in length and weighing more than 10 tons. Its jaws could crush the skull of a horse-sized mammal with a single bite. Its prey were no longer dinosaurs, but the new rulers of the land, early mammals that had grown bold along the edges of the water, ancient sloths, hoofed herbivores, and even the ancestors of modern capybaras ventured too close to the shore and vanished beneath the surface. Fossilized bite marks found on bones tell the story of that quiet violence, each indentation a record of power meeting curiosity. In this new age of mammals, the crocodile had not retreated. It had simply adapted its appetite. The rivers of the Miocene were shaped by creatures like Phytosaurus. Its movements carved channels through the mud. Its body pressed down the reeds, creating open pools where fish gathered. When it hunted, the splash of its strike could shift the flow of sediment, slowly changing the course of streams over centuries. Even its nesting sites, built on high banks, stabilized the soil and created small islands of raised ground that later became habitats for birds and plants. Without realizing it, these ancient crocodiles became engineers of the ecosystems they ruled. Their weight, their presence, their patience, all of it left a lasting mark on the rivers that came after. As the world cooled and the Miocene gave way to the Pliocene, the giant crocodiles began to fade. The wetlands they depended on shrank, replaced by the spread of grasslands and savannas. The rivers became narrower, faster, and less suited for the slow, massive bodies that had once ruled them. Smaller, more adaptable species took their place, crocodiles and alligators that could survive both flood and drought. The age of the giants ended quietly, not in catastrophe, but in change. And yet, the rivers still remember them. The modern Amazon, with its endless labyrinth of water, still carries their legacy. The curves of its channels, the calm pools between its branches, the silent gliding of crocodilians beneath the calm surface, all echo what came before. The patience of Purosaurus still lives in the black eyes of the caiman. The stealth of Deinosuchus lingers in the slow drift of the American alligator. The world they shaped has outlasted them, its rhythms still tied to the balance they once kept. In every quiet river, in every glimmering wetland that mirrors the sky, their memory remains. Not in fossils or bones alone, but in the flow of water itself, steady, enduring, and patient, just like the creatures that once ruled it. Time does not move evenly for every creature. For most, it is a river that carves new forms from old ones, reshaping bones, colors, and instincts until nothing of the beginning remains. But for a few, time seems to slow, almost to stop, as if nature itself hesitates, unwilling to change what already works. Among those few, the crocodile stands as one of evolution's quietest miracles. To look at a modern crocodile is to look backward through 200 million years without needing imagination. The same low, armored body, the same eyes peering from just above the waterline, the same jaws that close with the weight of inevitability. In a world where species rise and vanish in the blink of geological time, the crocodile has kept its shape as though time forgot to touch it. And yet, this stillness is not the absence of evolution, but its perfection. Scientists call this phenomenon evolutionary stasis. It does not mean that a species has stopped evolving, only that it has reached a state so finely balanced with its environment that further change offers no advantage. In the story of life, most creatures evolve in response to pressure, to new predators, new climates, or new sources of food. But when an organism's body already fits its world as precisely as a key fits its lock, nature simply stops turning the wheel. It pauses, letting the design continue as it is, carried forward by time without the need for revision. The crocodile reached that balance early. Its combination of stealth, armor, and patience proved nearly unbeatable. Other predators adapted to specific habitats, forests, skies, open plains, but crocodiles belonged to the border between them all. They were not creatures of land or water alone. They lived in the threshold between the two, where no single world could replace them. When the environment shifted, they shifted only slightly, enough to stay within that delicate middle ground. In their bones, this stasis is visible. Fossils of crocodiles, from the Jurassic or Cretaceous, look so much like those of living species that only careful study can tell them apart. The angles of their skulls, the curve of their tails, the texture of their scales, all have changed so little that they might as well belong to the same lineage of a single unbroken life. It is as though the earth has been remaking the same idea over and over again, copying it from one age to the next without correction. But to say that crocodiles have not changed is to overlook their quiet adaptability. They have endured through ice ages and greenhouse worlds, through the rise of continents and the fall of empires. They have watched rainforests spread and deserts take their place, oceans open and close, climates freeze and burn. And through it all, they have found a way to endure. The secret lies not in unchanging form, but in unchanging purpose. Their design is not frozen, it is flexible, perfect not in appearance, but in the way it continues to work, no matter what the world becomes. While other species evolve to specialize, crocodiles evolve to remain generalists. They eat anything. They live wherever water moves slowly enough for patience to matter. Their eggs hatch on riverbanks in Africa, in swamps of Southeast Asia, in wetlands of Australia and the Americas. They are the same animal in different worlds, written in the same ancient script, read in 1,000 different accents of climate and geography. To the human eye, their lack of visible change may seem like stubbornness, but in truth, it is a kind of wisdom. Evolution is not a race toward novelty, it is a process of testing. Every feature of every living thing is an answer to a question the world once asked. For the crocodile, those questions have not changed. How do you wait without starving? How do you strike without warning? How do you live where water and land are one? The answers remain the same, and so does the shape that carries them. This is the paradox of the crocodile, a creature ancient enough to be prehistoric, yet alive enough to outlast modern extinction. It embodies the idea that survival is not about constant transformation, but balance, the quiet adjustment between too much and too little, between risk and rest. It is not that the crocodile escaped evolution, but that it reached an understanding with it, an agreement that said, "This form is enough." When you see a crocodile resting at the edge of a river, its eyes still and unblinking, you are not only looking at an animal, you are looking at a success story that began before flowers existed, before birds sang, before mammals grew bold enough to leave the underbrush. The world has changed around it countless times, yet it remains, as if carved into the pattern of life itself. Perhaps that is why the crocodile feels both ancient and eternal, not just a survivor, but a symbol of what happens when life finds the perfect balance between motion and stillness, between hunger and patience. It is the shape that evolution paused upon, not out of neglect, but out of respect, a reminder that sometimes, to endure, it is enough simply to be what the world already understands. The story of life often feels like one of endless variety. Feathers and fur, scales and shells, creatures that walk, swim, or fly. Yet beneath all that difference runs a quiet pattern, a repetition that seems to hum through the fabric of nature itself. Across millions of years and separate worlds, life keeps rediscovering the same shapes. Wings that beat through air, fins that cut through water, eyes that catch light in the same familiar way, and among them, the long armored body of the crocodile, appearing again and again, as if the planet itself remembers how to make it. This is not imitation nor coincidence. It is physics, wearing the mask of biology. Every environment holds invisible laws that sculpt the bodies living within it. Water resists motion, pulling against every limb that moves through it. Air demands lift to escape gravity. Land pushes back against weight, forcing bones to grow thicker the larger an animal becomes. These laws are the same in every age, under every sun, and they leave living things with only a few efficient paths to follow. Where conditions repeat, so do solutions. That is why, when the first reptiles slipped into the Triassic rivers, their bodies stretched and flattened. It is why the same sleek curves appeared in fish, dolphins, and the marine reptiles that came long after. Streamlined shapes are not inventions of ancestry, but of necessity. To move through water without wasting energy, life must fold itself into a form that allows the current to pass without struggle. The long snout, the tapering tail, the low body pressed against the drag, these are answers written by physics long before evolution ever began its slow experiment. Gravity, too, has its handwriting. On land, it punishes size without strength. A body can only grow so large before weight outpaces support. So the same proportions reappear across species. The sturdy limbs of elephants mirrored in ancient sauropods, the balanced skeletons of bears and great ground sloths, even the wide stances of giant crocodiles that once walked like predators of the plains. These are echoes of the same principle that stability must answer gravity's pull. Nature learns the rule once and keeps it forever. Even muscle follows these patterns. To propel a body through water, through air, or across stone, the ratio of strength to weight has limits that cannot be ignored. A creature that moves too fast burns too much energy. One that conserves too much cannot catch what it hunts. So the muscles arrange themselves in familiar ways. The strong tail for thrust, the powerful jaws for capture, the tension stored in coiled legs or flexible spines. Different lineages, same geometry. Biologists call this repetition convergent evolution, when unrelated species arrive at the same design because they face the same problems. It is not copying, but arriving at the same conclusion through different paths. A dolphin and an ichthyosaur share no ancestor that swam in the same way, yet both wear the same silhouette, a torpedo of flesh and bone shaped by the same resistance of water. A hawk and a pterosaur share no lineage of flight, yet the spread of their wings follows the same equation of lift, drag, and airspeed. And the crocodile, repeated across eras by creatures only distantly related, embodies this same inevitability. It is what happens when patience and physics meet. The more we study life's great timeline, the clearer it becomes that form follows not only heritage, but environment. An animal's ancestry gives it the raw material, but the world around it refines that material into what works. The crocodile's ancestors were archosaurs, the same ancient stock that gave rise to birds and dinosaurs. Yet while some took to the air or sprinted across plains, the ones that lingered near the water found themselves pulled toward a single shape, long, flat, armored. A living answer to the question of how to wait, breathe, and strike within the same breath. In the end, the river chose its own design. There is a quiet beauty in this repetition. It reveals that evolution is not a wild painter throwing new shapes into the world at random, but a sculptor guided by the same physical truths that govern stars and stones. Just as gravity gathers dust into planets, water gathers flesh into streamlined forms. Just as heat drives wind across continents, hunger drives living things to adapt, again and again, toward efficiency. It is all one long conversation between matter and motion. Perhaps that is why, when the world remakes a crocodile, it always feels inevitable. No matter the era, no matter the lineage, something in the laws of the planet seems to pull life toward that patient geometry. A mouth for strength, a body for stillness, a tail for sudden force. It is not that nature loves the crocodile more than other forms, but that the crocodile's outline is one of nature's most fluent answers to the problem of survival. In that sense, evolution is less like invention and more like memory. It remembers what works, it repeats the patterns that last, and through those repetitions, we see the quiet harmony between life and the physics that hold it. Every river, every ocean, every stretch of open air whispers the same truth. Form is not random. It is the language the earth speaks through living things. And every crocodile, every wing, every fin is just a different way of saying the same word, balance. Across the history of life, certain shapes have refused to stay in one place. They drift from the sea to the shore, from the shore to the desert, from the river to the forest, as if the earth itself keeps remembering a design too perfect to let go. Among those recurring shapes, none is more persistent than the crocodiles. In the still waters of rivers, the crocodile's outline makes perfect sense. It is a creature built for patience, a body designed to float half seen between sunlight and reflection. Its skin, plated like armor, glints just enough to mimic rippling water. Its long, low shape lets it disappear beneath the surface with a single breath. Every curve, every muscle is tuned to the rhythm of water. But the story of this shape does not end where the river meets the land. Over the ages, the same body that ruled the swamps has appeared in places where no water flows, in dry plains, in forests, and even in ancient deserts where the air shimmered with heat. It seems impossible, yet the fossil record whispers the same truth again and again. The crocodile's form, born in water, found its way back onto the land, repeating itself where logic says it shouldn't. In the late Cretaceous of what is now Africa, the sand was red and the air heavy with dust. Rain came rarely, falling in violent bursts that carved sudden rivers through the dry earth. And in those short-lived streams lived a hunter with a face that could have been carved from a dream. It was called Caprasuchus, the boar crocodile. Its skull was long and narrow, its jaw lined with massive tusks that jutted outward like those of a wild boar. Unlike modern crocodiles, its legs stood directly beneath its body, lifting it high above the ground. It could run, sprint even, across open desert. It was a crocodile made for land, wearing the armor of its river ancestors but breathing the heat of the dunes. Fossils of Caprasuchus show the same familiar pattern: the long snout, the heavy tail, the ridged skin. Yet every part of its skeleton tells a new story. This was not a swimmer but a walker, a creature that hunted in silence across the dry earth. And it was not alone. Elsewhere, in South America, species like Borasuchus and Sebecus followed the same path. Different continents, different times, but the same experiment repeated. A crocodile's form reshaped for land. It is easy to think of this as coincidence, but deep beneath it lies the same physics that govern all life. The crocodile's shape, that long, muscular body with a strong spine and powerful tail, is not simply a product of water. It is a framework, a set of physical advantages that work wherever energy must be stored and released in sudden bursts. In water, that power drives the tail through the current. On land, it drives the body forward in a rush of speed and force. The same structure that allows a crocodile to lunge through the shallows allows its desert cousins to charge across open ground. Different worlds, same solution. The connection between form and environment runs deeper than climate or geography. It is the story of how the earth molds its inhabitants through motion and necessity. Water shapes the swimmer, but the memory of that movement lingers even when the water is gone. The land may dry, the rivers may vanish, but evolution remembers the designs that once worked. When the same pressures return, the need for stealth, the balance between armor and speed, the mastery of sudden movement, the same shapes return too. In this way, the crocodile's body becomes more than a single lineage. It becomes a language the earth uses to speak of balance, a way of saying that power need not be wasteful, that patience can be weapon enough. Whether in the shadow of trees or the heat of sand, the same design reappears because it answers questions that never stop being asked. To imagine the land-bound crocodiles is to picture a strange and quiet scene. The sun lies low on the horizon, painting long shadows across a dry plain. From behind a cluster of rocks, something stirs, the low, steady breath of a predator waiting. Its eyes catch the light, its body perfectly still. No river moves nearby, yet its muscles remember water. It moves with the same rhythm, the same measured patience as its ancestors who once waited beneath the reeds. Life has always been a conversation between shape and environment, each answering the other in turn. The crocodile's design is simply one of Earth's clearest replies, a form that refuses to belong to one element alone. It has slid through rivers, crossed oceans, climbed onto land, and returned again, over and over, through the ages. Not because it needed to change, but because it was already complete enough to belong anywhere. So when the land repeated the sea, when deserts echoed the silence of rivers long gone, the crocodile's shadow appeared once more. It was not reborn, only remembered. And in that memory, the planet revealed one of its oldest truths, that the boundaries between earth and water, between past and present, are far softer than they seem. The same currents that shape rivers shape bones, and through those bones, the earth dreams its patterns again. Across time, the same shapes reappear, not because nature copies itself, but because certain answers work so well that the planet keeps rediscovering them. In rivers and swamps, in the quiet shadows where water meets the shore, one of those answers is the crocodile's design. Long, low, and silent, it is a form born from patience. And though true crocodiles have held this shape for over 200 million years, they have not been alone in trying it. Even mammals, with their warm blood and quick minds, have reached for the same idea. In the long corridors of evolution, they have peered into the still water and seen the reflection of that ancient form, then stepped toward it. The first creatures to echo this design were not the great hunters of land, but the swimmers. Long after the age of the giant crocodiles had ended, the world's rivers filled with mammals that learned to move like them. The otter, for instance, is a living whisper of the crocodile's blueprint. Its body is sleek and flexible, the spine bending in smooth waves as it glides through the current. Its nostrils close underwater, its fur traps air for warmth, and its limbs work in gentle synchrony, front and back moving together like the slow roll of a crocodile's tail. But while the crocodile waits in stillness, the otter dances. Where the reptile conquers through patience, the mammal plays through motion. Different spirits, same solution. In colder waters, where survival depends on both warmth and stealth, another creature has perfected a similar balance, the sea otter. It floats on its back, eyes half closed, the calm rhythm of its breathing echoing the slow patience of its ancient counterpart. When it hunts beneath the surface, it moves with calculated quiet, feeling rather than chasing, sensing movement through touch as much as sight. Its stillness between dives, that long pause before it slips under again, holds a trace of the same waiting that the crocodile knows so well. Yet not all imitations come from water. Some are found where the river fades into forest or grassland, where new predators learn the value of patience. In Southeast Asia, the monitor lizards have long mirrored the crocodile's way of life. Large, muscular, and reptilian cousins rather than true kin, they move with the same controlled rhythm, their tongues tasting the air, their bodies pressed low to the ground. The water monitor, especially, glides between both worlds, a creature equally at home swimming through the shallows or stalking prey on land. Its patience, its sudden bursts of motion, and its cold precision are all echoes of an older design, the crocodile's lesson, written again in new flesh. But even among warm-blooded hunters, the same instinct arises. Watch a tiger near the water's edge, crouched beneath the reeds. Its eyes fix on the river's surface. It moves not with speed, but with silence. Each paw steps forward as if pressing the world itself to stillness. When the time comes, it strikes with the same coiled power, the same short, explosive force that defines the crocodile's ambush. The tiger is not shaped like a crocodile, yet the strategy it lives by carries the same essence: stillness as strength, patience as weapon. In the fossil record, there are even mammals that took the idea further, their bones revealing bodies sculpted for semi-aquatic life. One of them was Potamotherium, an otter-like hunter that swam through the rivers of ancient Europe more than 30 million years ago. Its body was long and supple, its limbs webbed, its jaws narrow and full of teeth for gripping slippery prey. It filled a niche that crocodiles had once held, the quiet ambusher of rivers. Another was Thalassocnus, a marine sloth that grazed in coastal shallows, its heavy bones acting like anchors to keep it steady underwater. Though a herbivore, its body mirrored the same hydrodynamic lines that evolution gives to all who move, through water's resistance. In a way, they were all participating in the same story, retelling the same idea in different forms. Even today, smaller echoes persist. The jaguar of South America, though a cat of the forest, often hunts along rivers, diving after fish and caimans. It kills with a bite through the skull, the same precise efficiency perfected by reptiles millions of years before. The caiman itself, a cousin of the true crocodile, watches the same water, sometimes becoming hunter, sometimes prey. It is a strange symmetry, two shapes separated by ancestry yet united by instinct. Stealth and patience are not owned by any one lineage. They are universal truths of survival, gifts passed quietly between species that never meet. Water rewards stillness, land rewards timing, and both demand restraint. In every age, creatures have learned this lesson, their bodies bending toward it as naturally as rivers find the sea. When mammals tried to become crocodiles, they were not trying to replace them, only to listen to the same laws of nature, to live in the places where movement betrays and silence saves, to find power not in running or flight, but in the art of waiting. And so the crocodile's design is not just a body, but an idea, one that life keeps remembering in fur, in scale, and in muscle. It is patience made flesh, a reflection that glides between worlds, whether cold-blooded or warm. Across ages and species, from river to desert to sea, the same lesson continues to breathe through time. Sometimes, to survive, it is enough to wait. In the quiet shallows of rivers where mist curls like smoke, a crocodile rests beneath the surface. To the passing eye, it is a motionless creature, ancient and unthinking, a leftover from an age when survival was only teeth and hunger. But beneath that stillness, something else stirs. There is awareness in the waiting. Not the reflexive instinct of a simple animal, but the slow and deliberate rhythm of a mind that remembers, observes, and plans. For centuries, humans have looked at crocodiles and seen only predators of instinct. Their faces, frozen in what looks like a permanent scowl, give nothing away. Their patience feels mechanical, their movements automatic. Yet science, in its patient way, has begun to uncover a different truth. Beneath those armored skulls lies not a primitive brain, but one of quiet sophistication. The crocodile's mind, honed over 200 million years, may be among the most surprising in the animal kingdom. Studies of their behavior reveal an intelligence that hides behind stillness. Crocodiles do not simply react to the world around them, they read it. They remember the seasons, the cycles of migration, the times when rivers rise and when they shrink. They know the places where animals cross, and they return to those same points year after year, waiting in perfect silence. This is not coincidence, it is memory, long, careful, and exact. Researchers have seen crocodiles adapt their hunting strategies in real time. When prey becomes wary of one stretch of river, the crocodile moves to another. When the water becomes too cold for quick strikes, they shift their hunting to the warm shallows where fish gather. Some even coordinate their attacks. In Australia and Africa, observers have recorded groups of crocodiles working together to herd schools of fish into tight clusters, taking turns lunging into the chaos. Each one waits for its moment, never disrupting the pattern, as if guided by an unspoken agreement. It is cooperation without words, ancient minds sharing intention through movement alone. Perhaps the most astonishing evidence of their intelligence comes from an observation made not long ago. During nesting season, crocodiles have been seen floating near colonies of wading birds, with small sticks resting delicately across their snouts. They hold perfectly still. When a bird swoops down to take the stick for its nest, the crocodile strikes. It is a simple act, but one that reveals a deep understanding of timing, context, and cause. These reptiles know that the birds build nests during a certain period, and they use that knowledge as bait. This, scientists say, is tool use, something once thought to belong only to crows, primates, and humans. Such behavior changes the way we see them. The crocodile, once seen as a relic of instinct, now stands among creatures capable of planning. Their brains, though small compared to mammals, are wired with remarkable efficiency. Inside, clusters of neurons control memory and learning, enabling them to solve problems in captivity and in the wild. Experiments have shown that they can distinguish between different human voices, learning which ones bring food and which bring danger. They recognize individuals, and even after long absences, they remember. Beyond the hunt, their social lives carry a quiet complexity. In large river systems, they form loose hierarchies. Older, larger crocodiles hold certain basking spots or shaded areas, while younger ones wait nearby. During nesting, females guard their eggs with fierce dedication, gently turning them to keep the temperature even. When the hatchlings call out from inside their shells, the mother carefully digs them free and carries them in her mouth to the water's edge. For weeks, she will protect them, staying close, her eyes always scanning the surface. There is tenderness here, though it is hidden beneath armor. It is a calm, ancient care, the same one that has preserved their lineage across the rise and fall of ages. Even their communication is more intricate than once believed. Crocodiles use low-frequency rumbles, vibrations that travel through both air and water. These sounds can summon others from hundreds of meters away, invisible ripples of sound that pass like whispers through the current. Mothers call their young this way, and males use it to signal dominance. In this submerged language, entire conversations unfold in silence. What makes the crocodile's mind so extraordinary is not its complexity by human measure, but its precision within its world. Every thought, every response, every decision has purpose. It wastes nothing. Its intelligence is quiet, deliberate, and exact, not a mind of curiosity like ours, but of balance. In that sense, it mirrors the design of its body, efficient, timeless, and unhurried. To watch a crocodile is to witness thought made still. The blink of an eye, the shift of a tail, the gentle rise to the surface. These are the visible traces of an invisible mind at work, a mind that remembers the floods and the droughts, that reads the sky through reflection and the land through sound, that has learned, over millions of years, the art of waiting. So when the river lies calm and a shape moves just beneath, it is not a creature ruled by instinct alone. It is an ancient intelligence, older than our cities, older than our kind, still thinking in the rhythm of water and time. The crocodile's mind is not primitive. It is eternal, a quiet consciousness that endures, patient as the earth itself. In the quiet waters of the tropics, crocodiles drift like ancient statues. Their skin is rough and scarred, their bodies marked by years of battle, yet they endure. Wounds that would fester in most creatures close without infection. Bites, scratches, and deep gashes heal cleanly, even in the warm, bacteria-filled rivers where they live. It is one of nature's quiet miracles, a predator built not only for strength, but for survival on a molecular level. For millions of years, crocodiles have lived in conditions that would destroy almost any other animal. Their habitats are thick with microbes, their mouths filled with bacteria strong enough to cause deadly infections in humans. Yet the crocodile remains unbothered. When injured in fights or while hunting, they do not limp away to die. They simply return to the water, their bodies healing as though guided by an invisible armor within. Scientists began to take notice of this resilience decades ago. When researchers examined crocodile wounds under controlled study, they found something astonishing. Even after severe injuries, there were almost no signs of infection. The reason lay hidden in their blood. Crocodile blood is unlike that of most vertebrates. It carries potent natural antibiotics, small molecules capable of killing bacteria, fungi, and even viruses. These compounds act faster and more powerfully than many of the drugs humans have invented. Their purpose is not to fight specific infections, but to protect the animal from whatever it encounters, no matter how new or foreign. It is a system built on adaptability, one that responds to danger before it even fully arrives. When scientists tested the blood of the saltwater crocodile, they discovered that it could destroy bacteria such as E. coli and Staphylococcus aureus, both of which can cause serious infections in humans. Even strains resistant to conventional antibiotics struggled to survive when exposed to crocodile serum. Some researchers believe these antimicrobial properties evolved as a direct response to the crocodile's environment, the constant exposure to decaying matter, stagnant water, and the open wounds of a predator's life. Over time, nature refined their immune defenses until they became among the most effective in the animal kingdom. But the blood is only part of the story. Their immune cells are unusually active, responding with both speed and precision. Unlike human white blood cells, which can take hours to identify and attack pathogens, crocodile cells act within minutes. They flood the site of injury, destroying invaders before infection can take hold. Even their saliva contains enzymes that suppress microbial growth. To the crocodile, the whole body is a fortress. This discovery has sparked curiosity not only in biology, but in medicine. If the secret behind the crocodile's immunity could be understood, it might one day inspire new treatments for humans. Researchers in Australia and Southeast Asia have begun studying how the peptides found in crocodile blood might be synthesized into new antibiotics. Early experiments show promise against infections that no longer respond to traditional drugs. In a time when antibiotic resistance threatens to outpace modern medicine, the crocodile's immune system offers a glimpse of how evolution solved the problem long before humans even existed. The idea is as poetic as it is scientific, that a creature feared for its power might hold within it the key to healing. Its bite is deadly, yet its blood may one day save lives. Its world is harsh, but within that harshness lies a balance that keeps it whole. Even the way a crocodile heals seems almost unnatural. When cut or wounded, its tissues regenerate with little scarring. Collagen fibers weave together cleanly, guided by chemical signals that humans have only begun to understand. Their ability to recover is not magic, but precision. The body's chemistry aligned perfectly with its environment. Every molecule, every reaction, shaped by time to endure. Scientists have also begun exploring whether this resilience might protect them from diseases beyond infection. Some studies suggest that crocodiles may resist certain cancers, though the evidence remains early and uncertain. Their cells appear less likely to undergo the kind of uncontrolled growth that leads to tumors. If true, it would mean that evolution has not only made them immune to the filth of their rivers, but to the decay that arises within. A creature of death, built to outlast death itself. It is a quiet irony. For millions of years, crocodiles have lived as the river's assassins, waiting for life to drift close enough to take. Yet beneath that still exterior lies one of nature's greatest healers. Their blood, their skin, their cells, all tuned to survival so complete that it borders on perfection. Perhaps that is the true marvel of the crocodile. Not just its power, not just its endurance, but its harmony with the world that made it. It does not resist its environment, it thrives within it. The same muddy water that would infect and kill most living things becomes its home, its refuge, its mirror. When the sun sets over a crocodile's river and the water turns the color of copper, it lies still, its eyes half above the surface. Beneath that calm, its body hums with quiet defense, ancient and unbroken. It is both predator and protector, both danger and cure, a reminder that nature's fiercest designs often carry their gentlest secrets within. In the long memory of humankind, certain animals have never been just animals. They have lived beside us, not only in rivers and jungles, but in stories, in faith, in the quiet corners of our imagination. The crocodile is one of them. Long before science gave it a name or a family, people looked into its eyes and saw something eternal staring back. From the earliest civilizations, humans have both feared and revered this creature. Its presence along the rivers that fed ancient cities made it impossible to ignore. Where the Nile wound through the deserts of Egypt, crocodiles slid through the same waters that carried boats, harvests, and prayers. To the people who depended on that river, the crocodile was a living god, a guardian and a warning. Its jaws could destroy, but its survival through drought and flood spoke of divine power. The Egyptians called it Sobek. He was worshipped as the god of strength, fertility, and protection. Temples were built in his honor, their walls carved with images of a man's body, crowned by the head of a crocodile. Priests raised sacred crocodiles within temple pools, feeding them honeyed bread and fine meats. When they died, their bodies were mummified, wrapped in linen, and buried in sacred tombs beside their human followers. To live near Sobek's waters was to walk the edge between life and death, a line as thin and shimmering as the surface of the Nile itself. People prayed to him for safety, but also for courage, because in Sobek's stillness they saw both patience and power, two things that all survival depends on. Far from the deserts of Egypt, in the vast wetlands of Africa, other stories grew. Tribes and villages living near crocodile-filled rivers carried their own legends. In parts of West Africa, the crocodile was seen as an ancestor, a bridge between the living and the dead. It was said that the spirits of those who passed away could return in the shape of these reptiles, gliding silently beneath the surface, watching over their descendants. To harm one was to invite misfortune, to disturb the balance between worlds. In some cultures, entire clans claimed kinship with crocodiles, painting their images on huts and drums, and passing down tales of how their forefathers were saved by one long ago. In other regions, the stories turned toward fear. The crocodile was the keeper of boundaries, the one who waited in the water when someone tried to cross before their time. Its presence at the edges of rivers symbolized the thin line between safety and danger, between the known and the unknown, and in that way, it became a part of human understanding of death itself. A creature that never aged in appearance, that lived through flood and famine, that could disappear beneath the surface for hours. It seemed less like an animal and more like a piece of the earth given motion. Among the Aboriginal peoples of northern Australia, the crocodile appears in Dreamtime stories, the why, sacred tales that explain how the world came to be. In one story, the crocodile was once a man who stole fire from the sky. Punished for his greed, he was cast into the water, where his skin turned rough and his body grew long. Even so, he kept the fire inside him, glowing through his yellow eyes. From then on, he became a guardian of rivers and lagoons, teaching respect for water's danger and its gift. To this day, many indigenous communities honor crocodiles as creators and lawgivers. Their carvings, songs, and dances carry the shape of the ancient reptile, the same curve of spine, the same eyes watching from still water. Across continents, the crocodile's image threads through myth and memory in different forms, yet always with the same quiet reverence. People who have lived near them have never mistaken them for simple beasts. There is a depth to their stillness, a mystery in the way they seem to wait for eternity itself. In many ways, the crocodile became a mirror of human reflection, a symbol of endurance, of patience, of survival against the world's chaos. Even in modern times, when stories have given way to science, the fascination remains. In some places, crocodiles are feared as threats. In others, they are protected as symbols of ancient strength. Tourists travel far to see them basking on riverbanks, their open mouths glinting like the stone carvings of forgotten temples. Artists and writers still borrow their imagery, the unblinking eye, the hidden power beneath calm water, to express things that words alone cannot. They have come to represent the idea of time itself, slow, unstoppable, and watchful. What makes the crocodile's image so enduring is that it holds two truths at once. It is both death and life. It can strike in an instant, yet spend hours unmoving, its breath soft as wind through reeds. It devours, but it also guards. It waits, but it never wastes. That paradox has followed it through human history, carved in stone, sung in ritual, whispered in dreams. When we look at a crocodile today, sunning itself by a river or drifting through green water, we are seeing not just an animal, but an ancient idea. It is a reminder of how long life has lasted, how patient the world can be. Its eyes, half in shadow and half in light, seem to hold every story we have ever told about the border between fear and reverence, between mortality and endurance. The crocodile has never needed to change, because its presence speaks the same language in every age, the language of stillness, of survival, of eternity reflected in the eyes of the living earth. Throughout the history of life, the surface of the earth has shifted, climates have turned, and species have risen and vanished. Yet within all this change, one thing has remained constant. Life has a tendency to return to the same ideas. It builds, forgets, and then rebuilds, not by imitation, but by necessity. When the same conditions repeat, the same forms rise from the dust and the water, shaped not by memory, but by the steady hand of physics and time. This recurring rhythm is called convergent evolution. It happens when living things that are unrelated, separated by vast distances in both geography and ancestry, find themselves molded into similar shapes. Different lineages, different materials, but the same purpose written into bone and motion. The result is a quiet poetry of repetition, life rediscovering itself, again and again, across the ages. In the seas of the Jurassic period, long before mammals ruled the oceans, reptiles learned to swim like dolphins. The ichthyosaurs, with their narrow snouts, strong tails, and crescent fins, carved through the water with the same efficiency as modern whales. They were not mammals, but air-breathing reptiles that had once walked on land. Over millions of years, Their limbs shortened and flattened, their bodies curved into perfect symmetry, and their tails became engines of propulsion. The same physics that sculpted the dolphin's form tens of millions of years later had already drawn the ichthyosaurs into almost the same design. One came from warm-blooded ancestors, the other from cold-blooded ones, yet both carried the same answer within their bodies. The ocean rewards only a few efficient shapes, and life, following the path of least resistance, finds them over and over again. On land, another echo unfolded, half a world away. In Australia, far from wolves and foxes, a creature evolved that hunted and lived almost exactly as they did. It was the thylacine, often called the Tasmanian tiger. It had the same long muzzle, the same forward-facing eyes, and the same agile stride, but it was no true dog. It was a marsupial, a relative of kangaroos and wombats, whose young developed in a pouch. The resemblance between thylacine and wolf was so precise that even experts, studying skulls without labels, sometimes struggled to tell them apart. Separated by oceans and by entire branches of evolution, both animals had followed the same thread, the shape of an efficient hunter, light enough to chase, strong enough to kill, balanced enough to endure. The sea, too, holds one of nature's most curious repetitions, the evolution of the crab. Across the branches of the crustacean family tree, creatures as different as lobsters, shrimp, and hermit crabs have each evolved into crab-like forms, again and again. This process has happened so many times that scientists gave it a name of its own, carcinization. A long body becomes shorter, the abdomen folds beneath the thorax, the arms and over, legs flatten and widen. Over time, the animal becomes compact and armored, moving sideways with careful precision. There is no shared ancestor that began as a crab. Instead, nature simply found the same form repeatedly, as if returning to a design that works too well to be forgotten. The crab's body, low, hard, and efficient, fits the demands of a world where shelter, speed, and defense must exist in the same frame. These patterns reveal something profound about life's connection to the physical world. The laws of motion, gravity, and resistance guide every living thing as surely as they guide falling rain or flowing rivers. Water limits the shapes that can swim through it. Air decides the wings that can rise within it. Stone and soil shape the legs that walk upon them. When those same conditions repeat, the same forms emerge, whether in reptile, mammal, or crustacean. Evolution, for all its complexity, is not random chaos. It is a patient sculptor, carving solutions from the same set of materials, bound by the same natural rules. It creates variety, but within patterns. It explores, but often returns to what has already proven to work. The dolphin and the ichthyosaur, the thylacine and the wolf, the many separate paths that led to the crab, all are evidence that function governs form more deeply than ancestry. Seen through this lens, life's diversity becomes a kind of music, repeating motifs across the grand symphony of time. Each creature is a variation on an older theme, reshaped to match its surroundings, yet always drawn toward harmony with the physical world that contains it. The repetition is not dullness, but refinement. The earth keeps testing its designs until they fit perfectly into the rhythm of air, water, and gravity. Nature does not only evolve, it remembers what works, not through thought, but through balance. It reuses what fits, and in doing so, fills the world with quiet familiarity, the same outlines reappearing. In different ages, the same solutions rediscovered beneath new suns. Through this repetition, life reveals something greater than survival. It reveals the continuity between every creature that has ever lived and the laws that shape them all. Beneath the beauty and chaos of life, there is a quiet logic at work. Every curve, every angle, every muscle that moves has been shaped not just by chance, but by mathematics, the unseen geometry of survival. Evolution, for all its endless experimentation, often returns to patterns that obey the laws of physics and balance. It does not draw freely, but measures, refines, and adjusts until living forms become equations in motion. The crocodile, patient and unchanging, is one of nature's clearest examples of that precision. Its body is not random, it is a sum of perfect compromises, flat, yet strong, streamlined, yet armored, long enough to glide, but compact enough to twist and strike. Every line serves a purpose, every proportion tuned over time to meet the same demand, to live efficiently within the resistance of water and the weight of gravity. The crocodile's shape can be read like a diagram. Its head tapers into a low, narrow snout that slices through water with reverence. Little disturbance. Its eyes and nostrils sit high, forming a straight line across the top of the skull, allowing the rest of the body to remain hidden below the surface. The spine curves with subtle elasticity, storing energy like a coiled spring. The tail, thick and muscular, forms a natural lever. When it moves, the force travels from head to tail in a gentle wave, a motion so efficient that it wastes almost nothing. In still water, a crocodile can move forward without ripples, as though it were not swimming at all, but becoming part of the current itself. Such design is no accident. The proportions of a crocodile's body follow the same physical rules that govern the shape of aircraft, fish, and even rivers. In each case, motion through a resisting medium, whether air or water, demands a form that minimizes drag. The long, flattened body, the tapered tail, the smooth scales arranged like interlocking plates, all reduce turbulence. To the human eye, these details seem like the marks of age, but they are the product of natural engineering. In a sense, the crocodile is as much a work of physics as of biology. When studied closely, the relationships between its measurements reveal patterns that appear elsewhere in nature. The curve of its tail echoes the same spiral ratios that shape shells and hurricanes. The spacing of its armored scales, though formed through bone and keratin, falls into rhythmic patterns that distribute pressure evenly across the skin. Even its skull, when examined in profile, balances mass and strength with mathematical precision, a geometry of power concentrated where the bite begins. Each bone carries only what it must. Nothing is wasted, and nothing is excess. Nature often works towards such balance. It is the same efficiency that gives wings their span and trees their branches. The shapes that survive are the ones that obey the limits of energy and material. To fly, a wing must be long enough to lift, but not so wide that it drags. To swim, a body must be narrow enough to cut through resistance, but broad enough to stay stable. The crocodile sits at the point where those lines meet, between movement and stillness, between water and land. It has found the geometry that allows both, and because of that, it has endured when others vanished. For millions of years, this balance has remained nearly unchanged. In mathematical terms, the crocodile's design reached an equilibrium. Its proportions fit so perfectly within the rules of its world that further alteration brought no improvement. Evolution, finding nothing left to refine, simply kept the equation as it was. The result is a living shape that borders on timelessness, a body so tuned to its purpose that even shifting continents and changing climates could not outdate it. The harmony of its form extends beyond structure into behavior. A crocodile does not waste energy. It moves only when it must, hunts with precision, and endures long stretches of stillness. Its metabolism, its senses, even its heartbeat, all work within the same rhythm of economy. This restraint mirrors its body's geometry, both built to conserve, both shaped to last. It is the embodiment of efficiency, a creature that has solved the problem of survival not through constant change, but through perfect adaptation. Scientists who model animal motion sometimes describe crocodiles using the same language used for machines: vectors, torque, flow, resistance. Yet the elegance of this creature cannot be reduced to numbers alone. The crocodile's form may be bound by mathematics, but it lives through grace. Its slow emergence from the water, its effortless glide, its patience in waiting, all are expressions of that deeper harmony between life and physics. It is geometry made alive, numbers given pulse and breath. To look at a crocodile resting in the shallows is to see a living equation written by time. It carries the memory of a world older than ours, a design tested not in theory, but in survival. Its body tells a truth that belongs to every living thing, that life endures not by fighting against the laws of nature, but by fitting within them, in the lines of its form, the angles of its movement, and the rhythm of its stillness. The crocodile remains one of evolution's most beautiful proofs that balance is the purest shape of all. Beneath our feet lies a library written in stone. Every layer of earth holds the remains of lives that came before, pressed into silence by the weight of time. For most of human history, these shapes were mysteries: seashells on mountain tops, bones larger than any known creature, impressions of leaves from forests long vanished. It took generations before we learned to read them. Today, paleontologists follow that trail of stone like a story, each fossil a sentence in the language of the earth. Among those who study ancient life, the crocodile lineage has always carried a special fascination. Its story stretches unbroken across more than 200 million years, and yet it is filled with ghosts, creatures that look like crocodiles but belong to entirely different families. Tracing this lineage is not about finding the biggest fossils or the most dramatic skeletons, but about noticing the smallest details. Sometimes it comes down to the curve of a jaw, the placement of a pot, nostril, or the shape of a single bone no larger than a finger. When a fossil is unearthed, it does not immediately reveal its identity. It takes patient work, years of comparison, and the trained eye of someone who understands how bones tell stories. A scientist kneels beside the stone, brushing away the dust of millions of years, and looks for clues. The texture of the surface hints at scales or skin. The length of the limbs suggests whether it walked upright or sprawled low to the ground. The skull, when found intact, becomes a map of intent, the shape of the jaws, revealing how the creature fed, the size of the eye sockets hinting at whether it hunted by day or by night. But the path is rarely clear. History is filled with fossils that fooled even the most skilled minds. In the 19th century, paleontologists uncovered reptilian remains that appeared so crocodile-like that they were classified as early croc ancestors. Only decades later did closer study reveal that many of these crocodiles belong to entirely different branches of life: the Phytosaurs, the Raulsuchians, and other look-alike predators from the Triassic world. Their similarities were not proof of shared ancestry, but of convergent evolution. They had lived in the same kinds of rivers, stalked the same kinds of prey, and faced the same physical laws. And so, without any connection of bloodline, they had evolved into the same shape. Each misclassification became a lesson. Fossils once thought to connect one species to another instead showed how evolution repeats its own successes. The Earth reuses designs, and those designs leave echoes in the rock record that can blur the boundaries between unrelated lives. For a paleontologist, this is not a frustration but a revelation, evidence that evolution's story is not a straight line but a web of recurring solutions. Every correction in the fossil record brings the picture of life into sharper focus, not by simplifying, it, but by revealing its depth. The work itself requires both science and imagination. When a fossil is found, it is never whole. A leg here, a spine there, a scattered jaw in another layer entirely. Sometimes only a fragment of a tooth survives, the rest carried away by time and water. To rebuild an animal from this, scientists use both mathematics and memory. They measure the angles, compare them to known species, and then fill in the missing spaces with careful inference. It is as close to resurrecting the past as anyone will ever come. There is a quiet moment that many paleontologists describe when a new fossil begins to take shape in their mind. After months or years of study, the pieces align. The bones that once seemed unrelated reveal their pattern, and suddenly, something long extinct lives again in understanding. That moment, when knowledge and imagination meet, is one of the deepest rewards of the science. It is not just the thrill of discovery, but the professed awareness that one is seeing something the earth has hidden for ages. Sometimes the discoveries arrive unexpectedly. A fossil erodes out of a cliff after rain. A student brushes aside dust and notices a shape that others have missed. One moment, it is just a piece of stone. The next, it is a creature's final gesture, frozen in time, a limb mid-stride, a rib cage curved around air that has not existed for eons. And even then, the work continues. The fossil must be cleaned, studied, and compared. Every mark is recorded, every groove measured. In museums and laboratories, teams spend months cataloging what nature took seconds to bury. What keeps them searching is not only curiosity, but a sense of connection. Every fossil bridges the gap between the living and the vanished. It reminds us that what exists now is part of a continuum stretching backward beyond measure. To hold a piece of fossilized bone is to touch time itself, a record of motion, of breath, of design, repeated across eras. The crocodile's ancestors and imitators, its cousins and competitors, all leave behind pieces of this trail. And through those fragments, we glimpse not only their shapes, but the slow, enduring memory of life finding its way through change. The fossil trail does not lead to a final answer. It does not end at a single point in history. Instead, it flows endlessly backward, fading into the deep past where the first bones dissolved into sediment. Each discovery, no matter how small, adds another note to the quiet song that the earth has been singing for hundreds of millions of years. In that song, there is no beginning or end, only the steady rhythm of life becoming stone, and stone whispering the shape of life again. Deep within every crocodile, hidden beyond bone and muscle, lies a record more enduring than any fossil. It is not carved in stone but written in code, a chain of molecules that has carried their design across hundreds of millions of years. This record is the genome, the long memory of life itself. Where fossils tell us what a creature looked like, DNA tells us how it became. When scientists first began to study the crocodile's genetic material, they expected complexity, a web of constant change like that found in mammals and birds. Instead, what they found was stillness. The crocodile genome is remarkably stable. It changes at one of the slowest rates known among vertebrates. Each small mutation, each shift in the sequence, happens with almost glacial patience. While other animals rewrote their blueprints again and again, crocodiles seemed content to keep theirs nearly the same. This genetic stillness mirrors what the fossils have long shown. Over vast spans of time, crocodiles have altered little in form or function. The DNA confirms that this is not coincidence but design through balance. Their genome carries few errors because their way of life leaves little need for correction. It is as if nature wrote a pattern so efficient that it simply chose to preserve it. Comparing their DNA to that of other reptiles, and especially to birds, reveals something even more astonishing. Despite their differences in behavior and environment, crocodiles and birds are close genetic relatives. Both descend from the great archosaurs, the ruling reptiles that filled the world before the first mammals took shape. In the genetic code, that ancient connection still lingers. The order of their genes, the way certain sequences appear along their chromosomes, shows shared ancestry that reaches back to the age when dinosaurs ruled the continents. The crocodile and the sparrow, divided by shape and sky, are both branches of the same ancient tree. Bird genomes, however, tell a story of rapid evolution. Their DNA mutates quickly, driven by flight, climate, and the demands of high metabolism. Every small advantage is tested, every change woven into their descendants. Crocodiles, in contrast, move through a different rhythm. Their bodies, their behaviors, and even their cells exist in a state of deep conservation. They have fewer generations per century, fewer chances for mutation, and far less pressure to change. Their slow heartbeat and long lifespan give their genes time to rest between revisions. The stability of their DNA has another layer of meaning. When researchers compared genomes across species, they found that crocodiles have retained many ancient sequences almost untouched since the time of the dinosaurs. Where most lineages accumulate changes and lose older codes, crocodiles seem to hold on. It is as if they serve as living archives, keeping molecular memories that vanished elsewhere. These unchanged stretches of DNA provide scientists with rare insight into how the genomes of ancient reptiles once looked before the world shifted and their relatives evolved new directions. The pace of mutation is one of the quiet engines of evolution. In some animals, it races ahead, pushing species into constant experimentation. In others, like the crocodile, it slows almost to stillness. This slow rhythm does not mean that evolution has stopped. It means that the balance between creature and environment has reached harmony. In the crocodile, that equilibrium is written into every cell. The genes that govern growth, metabolism, and reproduction have found their efficient states and hold them tightly. The molecular machinery of life is tuned so well that natural selection rarely finds reason to interfere. Through DNA sequencing, scientists can now trace how the crocodile's genome diverged from its ancient relatives. The points of branching, where birds took to the air and crocodiles remained close to the water, are marked not just by fossils, but by the rearrangement of genetic instructions. A few key differences in developmental genes shaped their future paths. One branch soared skyward, its bones hollowed and lightened, its metabolism accelerated. The other thickened its armor, slowed its blood, and learned the patience of still water. Both inherited the same ancestral code, yet each read it differently, guided by environment and time. This slow pace of molecular change gives the crocodile a rare kind of endurance. Where rapid evolution brings fragility, the crocodile's stillness brings longevity. Its genome is a system perfected not by constant invention, but by quiet refinement. It adapts not by rewriting itself, but by waiting for the world to come to it. In that patience lies one of evolution's gentlest lessons. Change is not always a race. Sometimes, survival belongs to those who remain steady when everything else transforms. The crocodile's genome shows that evolution does not always hurry forward. It listens, it waits, and when it finds perfection and balance, it allows time to stand almost still. Inside every crocodile, that ancient calm continues to flow through its blood, guiding each heartbeat, each breath, each slow glide through dark water. The same sequences that once shaped the jaws of its prehistoric ancestors are still at work today, unchanged, unbroken, quietly writing the same song of endurance that began when the first archosaurs stirred beneath the Triassic sun. The genome, like the animal it built, has learned the art of survival through stillness, the power of waiting, written into every line of life's code. Today, when we look across a riverbank at dusk, the sight of two quiet eyes breaking the surface of the water feels almost timeless. It is the same posture that has waited in the shallows for millions of years, unchanged and patient. Yet the world around those eyes has transformed completely. Where once there were dinosaurs and primeval forests, now there are cities, bridges, and motorboats. Still, the crocodile endures, not as a relic, but as a living part of Earth's modern ecosystems. Across continents and climates, crocodiles continue to shape the landscapes that shelter them, from the slow green waters of the Nile to the deep channels of the Amazon, from the tangled swamps of Southeast Asia to the sunlit wetlands of northern Australia. They remain the quiet regulators of balance. Their presence defines the rhythm of these environments, holding each system steady in ways that often go unseen. In the rivers of Africa, the Nile crocodile lies beneath curtains of reeds, its body blending perfectly with the murky light. Here, every movement in the water matters. When a fish darts too close, when an antelope bends for a drink, the croc's sudden strike is more than a moment of predation. It is an act that shapes the living web. By feeding on the weak, the sick, and the careless, crocodiles help keep populations of prey species healthy and dynamic. They prevent overgrazing near the banks, protecting the fragile plants that hold the soil together. Each ambush, as violent as it may seem, is also a small act of ecological order. In the floodplains of northern Australia, saltwater crocodiles patrol brackish waters where the sea meets the land. They are ancient travelers between worlds, moving freely through rivers and open coasts. Their territories stretch for kilometers, invisible borders marked by patience and memory. Each adult croc maintains control over its hunting grounds, ensuring that food sources are never exhausted. Even their nesting behavior reshapes the land. When they dig into the muddy banks to lay eggs, they aerate the soil and create small pools that later become nurseries for fish and frogs. The simple act of nesting becomes a quiet contribution to the cycle of renewal. In the American tropics, caimans, the crocodile's smaller cousins, play their role in the same pattern. When the dry season comes and the rivers shrink to shallow pools, they become custodians of water. Their movements carve channels that connect these pools, allowing fish and aquatic plants to survive until the rains return. Where they live, life persists even in scarcity. Through their bodies, the landscape learns to breathe. Every ecosystem that hosts a crocodile has, in some way, been shaped by it. They are not passive inhabitants, but architects of stability. When they vanish, the balance falters. Without crocodiles, herbivores linger longer at the water's edge, stripping plants to their roots. Without their presence, scavengers lose one of their most important food sources, for crocodiles often leave behind remains that feed countless smaller lives. The loss of a single apex predator ripples outward, reshaping forests, floodplains, and coastlines alike. Scientists studying wetlands have found that the presence of crocodiles can even influence nutrient cycles. Their waste enriches the water with nitrogen and phosphorus, supporting plankton that feed the smallest organisms. In this way, the crocodile sustains life from the bottom up, linking predator and prey in one continuous chain of exchange. Their stillness hides an invisible labor, the quiet maintenance of balance. But in the modern world, that balance is often disturbed. For centuries, humans hunted crocodiles for their hides, and out of fear, many species neared extinction before conservation efforts began to recognize their value. In the 20th century, international protection laws and careful breeding programs began to rebuild their populations. In some regions, like northern Australia and parts of Africa, their numbers have recovered so well that communities now work to coexist with them again, learning to share rivers once more. Conservationists now see crocodiles not as threats, but as indicators of healthy environments. A river that can support a breeding population of crocodiles is a river that is alive. It means the fish are plentiful, the banks are stable, and the surrounding forest still breathes in rhythm with the water. Through the eyes of the crocodile, scientists can read the well being of entire ecosystems. Yet the future of these ancient reptiles is still uncertain in many places. Habitat loss, pollution, and climate change continue to reshape their world. Rising sea levels alter nesting grounds, while human expansion fragments the wetlands they depend on. In some areas, crocodiles wander into villages and towns, driven by hunger or drought, reminding us that the border between wild and human is thinner than it seems. In response, new efforts have begun to not only protect crocodiles, but to understand them more deeply. Researchers study their migrations, their role in freshwater health, and even their relationship with local communities. Ecotourism projects now bring people face to face with these creatures, not in fear, but in reverence. The more we watch them, the clearer their purpose becomes. They are not remnants of a forgotten age, but partners in the living world. When night falls over a wetland, the water settles into stillness. A crocodile drifts soundlessly beneath the stars, its body reflecting light like old bronze. Fish circle beneath it, birds roost along the edges, and the air hums with quiet life. Everything moves in subtle balance, every creature performing its part. In that silence, the crocodile remains what it has always been, a keeper of order, an ancient guardian of the earth's slow pulse, and a living reminder that even in modern time, the oldest designs still hold the world together. Life, in all its endless forms, has a quiet way of remembering. It does not hold memory as we do, through thought or story, but through shape. Across the deep stretch of time, nature carries forward what works, letting the same patterns rise again and again like ripples meeting the shore. The body of a crocodile is one of those enduring echoes, a memory so ancient that it has reappeared in creatures long extinct, written into flesh by the logic of survival. When scientists study evolution, they often describe it as a process of change, of species endlessly transforming in response to the pressures of the world. But in truth, evolution is as much about remembering as it is about invention. Each successful design leaves a faint trace, not in thought, but in potential, a whisper in the genetic code that says, "This works, keep this." And so, even after entire lineages vanish, the same solutions rise once more in different bodies, guided by physics, environment, and chance. The crocodile's shape is one of those solutions, a structure remembered by life itself. To understand this, it helps to imagine Earth not as a single timeline, but as a vast sea of possibilities. Every species is a wave, shaped by wind and water, following patterns that the sea has learned to repeat. When one wave breaks, another follows, built from the same currents. Over time, the outlines reappear, familiar yet new, ancient yet alive. The crocodile's long, low form, its patient stillness, its balance between strength and restraint, all are patterns the living world has redrawn again and again, not through intention, but through remembrance. Some scientists call this phenomenon convergent evolution, where unrelated species evolve similar features because they face similar challenges. But there is something almost poetic beneath the science. When life repeatedly finds the same design, it feels less like coincidence and more like recollection. The Earth, through its long history of trial and error, seems to hold memory in motion. It recalls what moved gracefully through water, what breathed between air and river, what endured through heat and cold. And so, without awareness, life remembers its own wisdom. The crocodile's body is a living archive of that wisdom. Its proportions, honed over millions of years, are not simply adaptations to a specific moment, but echoes of solutions refined across time. Every muscle, every scale, every quiet breath carries the record of what once worked before. Even the way it waits, half hidden beneath the surface, belongs to that memory. It is the posture of creatures that learned early on that patience could be as powerful as speed. In that stillness, the crocodile holds something older than thought, the memory of a world learning how to move. When we look at its reflection in a muddy river, we are seeing not just one animal, but the persistence of an idea. Long before the first true crocodiles existed, other beings had already worn this outline. Each found their way to the same balance of form and function. The earth, through its quiet intelligence, had shaped the pattern once and found it good enough to keep. It is this repetition, this subtle recall of efficiency, that gives evolution its continuity. Life does not plan, yet it remembers through form. In a way, this memory is a kind of intelligence, not the quick spark of mind, but the deep wisdom of time itself. The planet learns by doing, by allowing what thrives to endure and what falters to fade. Every creature that survives leaves behind a trace, a small contribution to the long equation of existence. Over the ages, those traces combine, guiding evolution toward designs that work so well they seem inevitable. The crocodile is not just an animal that survived, but an expression of the planet's long experience, sculpted into living symmetry. This is why the crocodile feels both ancient and eternal. It carries the prosody, memory of entire worlds that have come and gone. Its body has glided through eras of fire and ice, beneath skies filled with creatures now lost to time. And yet, when it moves through the water today, it feels perfectly present, as if the world itself still needs the lesson it embodies. It is not nostalgia that keeps this shape alive, but usefulness. Evolution remembers what works, and it reuses it. The idea that repetition could be a form of intelligence is both strange and comforting. It suggests that life is not blind, only quiet in its awareness. Through the endless rhythm of change, it keeps the memory of balance close at hand. The crocodile's continued existence is proof of that quiet reasoning, a whisper from the ancient earth that perfection sometimes lies not in invention, but in remembering what once was. In the gentle pulse of its heartbeat, in the curve of its tail beneath the surface, in the unbroken patience that defines its life, the crocodile carries something more than survival. It carries remembrance, the record of all the rivers, all the suns, and all the worlds that shaped it. And as it waits in silence beneath the sky, it reminds the living world that nature never forgets what it once perfected. Every ripple that spreads from its body is an echo, not of the present, but of the long, patient memory of evolution itself. If all the crocodiles on Earth were to vanish tomorrow, it might seem like the end of a story that began over 200 million years ago. But life has a strange way of remembering its successes. Across time, it has returned again and again to shapes that work, as if some quiet memory rests within the fabric of evolution itself. The crocodile form, balanced perfectly between land and water, power and stillness, has already appeared more than once in history. And so, even if one day the last crocodile slides beneath the surface and never rises again, the earth may not forget what it has learned. To imagine the future of the crocodile's shape, we must first imagine a world far beyond our own, a world long after us, when the continents have drifted and the climates have changed once more. Rivers might flow where deserts once stood, and forests might spread where oceans once shimmered. The air could grow thicker or thinner, warmer or colder, but life would go on reshaping itself to meet the moment. And somewhere, in the quiet edge between water and land, nature might rediscover that familiar silhouette. Long body, low stance, eyes just above the surface. Not the same creature, but the same idea made flesh again. If the crocodiles vanished, their niche, that delicate balance between predator and water, would not remain empty for long. Evolution abhors an unfilled role. Amphibious hunters would rise to take their place, drawn not by choice, but by necessity. Perhaps mammals, in some far future, could find their way back into the shape. We have already seen hints of this. Otters have learned the art of silent swimming in ambush. Seals glide with the same slow grace, their bodies narrowing into torpedoes of muscle and instinct. Even jaguars, stalking riverbanks in the night, echo something ancient in their patience. Given enough time, one of them, or something descended from them, could inherit the same role that crocodiles hold today. It would not happen all at once. Evolution is never hurried. It begins with small changes, small advantages, a mammal that learns to wait longer beneath the surface, a reptile that grows heavier bones for balance in water. Generation after generation, those traits would refine, until one day, a creature would rise from a flooded plain that looked uncannily familiar. Long body, armored hide, jaws curved for ambush, different blood, different ancestry, yet the same eternal design. The physics of the crocodile shape make it almost inevitable. To master the art of both swimming and wading, an animal must obey the same simple rules. The water resists broad bodies and high profiles. Predators that rely on stealth must keep low and narrow, their eyes lifted just enough to see. Their tails, for balance and propulsion, must act like living oars. Their limbs, pulled tight against the body, must support both walking and gliding. Even without remembering the crocodile directly, life would find these answers again, just as it once did with dolphins, ichthyosaurs, and countless others shaped by the same mathematics of motion. Perhaps, in the deep future, the descendants of birds could rediscover this design. Some birds already wade and hunt with quiet patience, herons, anhingas, and cormorants, each with eyes trained on the ripples of the surface. If the world were to flood again, if wetlands covered much of the land, these birds might adapt. Over millions of years, their wings might shorten, their legs grow thicker, their bones dense with muscle. One day, a descendant of a heron might no longer take flight, but instead slide through the water like a scaled shadow, its feathers long replaced by armor-like skin. The shape would return, ancient yet new, guided not by memory alone but by the simple logic of what works. Life has done this before. It has created crocodiles from reptiles, from fish-like hunters, from desert stalkers and sea predators. Every time, the result was different in lineage but similar in form. The earth itself seems to favor this balance, this perfect geometry of survival. A body that can wait for hours without moving, then strike in a burst of precision, speaks to a kind of evolutionary efficiency that transcends time. It is not just a shape of power, but a shape of patience, and patience is one of the universe's oldest talents. In the far reaches of the future, when today's species are gone and their bones have turned to stone, the pattern will remain in the planet's quiet memory. The rivers will still need their watchers. The shallow waters will still call for predators that blend with shadow and current. And when that time comes, something will answer. It may not have scales or the same golden eyes. It might breathe through lungs or gills or something else entirely. But its outline will feel familiar, as if the world itself had traced the memory by instinct. The crocodile's story is not about endurance alone. It is about recurrence. It is the rhythm of life remembering what it once achieved, the echo of a design too complete to vanish. Even if the crocodile's bloodline fades, its form will one day return, shaped again by patience, by physics, and by the slow wisdom of the earth. In that distant world, another pair of eyes will rise above another river, and once more the ancient shape will glide beneath the surface, silent and inevitable, the future remembering the past. In every age, life has celebrated motion, wings beating, herds running, waves crashing. The living world often seems to belong to the swift and the strong. But beneath the noise and movement, another kind of mastery exists, one that does not chase, does not shout, and does not rush. It waits, it listens, it endures. The crocodile has lived by this quiet wisdom longer than most. Its strength lies not in its jaws or in the muscle beneath its scales, but in its patience. This creature does not waste energy on restlessness. It moves when the world calls for it, and otherwise, it becomes part of the background, indistinguishable from the river itself. Its stillness is not weakness, but understanding. It knows that life will come close enough, if only one waits long enough. On warm afternoons, crocodiles lie motionless beneath branches heavy with birds. The water laps gently at their backs. Minutes pass into hours. Time itself seems to slow. In those long stretches of calm, the animal is both present and invisible, a heartbeat woven into the rhythm of the river. Only when opportunity appears does the stillness transform. A sudden surge, a single strike, then quiet again. It is a life lived not in constant action, but in chosen moments. Scientists have often marveled at how efficiently crocodiles live. Their bodies use little energy when resting. Their heartbeat slows between breaths, and they can go for weeks without feeding. They are creatures sculpted by restraint. In a world that burns quickly through its resources, the crocodile has survived by doing almost nothing. It endures drought, flood, and famine not through force, but through calm. Every movement is measured, every decision deliberate. This patience is not only a physical trait, but something deeper, a pattern of survival that reaches beyond species and time. To endure across millions of years, through changing continents and climates, requires more than adaptation. It requires stillness of purpose. The crocodile does not fight the river's flow. It lets the current carry it, using the world's own energy to its advantage. In that surrender lies its strength. It is the art of conservation, written into instinct. There is a quiet symmetry in this way of being. The crocodile's stillness mirrors the patience of the planet itself. Rivers carve valleys not through violence, but through persistence. Mountains rise grain by grain, lifted by the slow pressure of time. Forests grow not in leaps, but in centuries of steady renewal. In each of these, as in the crocodile, survival is a form of patience. The earth does not hurry, it simply continues. The longer one observes this creature, the clearer that truth becomes. Its eyes break the surface of the water like small lanterns in the dusk. Beneath them, the body rests in silence, perfectly still, reflecting the soft light of the sky. It seems to breathe with the planet itself, as if the air and water move through it rather than around it. This moment, this absence of motion, is the essence of its power, not dominance, but balance, not speed, but understanding. There is a lesson here that extends beyond the animal world. Patience, as the crocodile teaches it, is not the absence of action, it is the mastery of timing. It is knowing when to move and when to wait, when to strike and when to remain unseen. In that rhythm, survival becomes more than instinct, it becomes art. This quiet intelligence has kept the crocodile's kind alive through global extinctions, ice ages, and revolutions of climate. It may yet carry others, in other forms, into futures we cannot imagine. Even in human life, echoes of this patience remain. Civilizations rise and fall, ideas evolve, and progress surges forward, yet every lasting creation depends on the same principle of stillness. The seed waits before it grows. The artist pauses before a stroke. The scientist observes before discovery. In every act of endurance or creation, there is a moment of silence before the motion begins. Nature, in its oldest forms, reminds us that waiting is not idle, it is preparation. In the crocodile, time moves differently. It does not rush toward the next meal or the next season. It flows like the river it inhabits, slow, unhurried, eternal. This calm is not born of simplicity, but of wisdom written in blood and bone. Across millions of years, while entire lineages of animals rose and vanished, this quiet watcher remained, breathing softly in the dark. It has learned the strength of restraint, the endurance of silence, and the deep rhythm that binds life to its environment. As night falls, the river grows still again. The stars shimmer above the surface, reflected in eyes that have seen more than any living species alive today. In that reflection, there is peace. The crocodile does not chase the past or the future. It rests within the moment, perfectly aligned. With the slow heartbeat of the world, patience has become its armor, its language, its way of being, and perhaps, somewhere in that stillness, lies the oldest secret of survival, that endurance is not about struggle, but about harmony. The crocodile does not conquer time. It moves with it, quietly, endlessly, until both become one. In the quiet rhythm of the earth, some shapes never truly disappear. They may sink beneath the weight of centuries, buried in silt and shadow, but time has a way of remembering what works. Among those memories, the crocodile's form lingers like a song that the planet hums to itself, slow, patient, and nearly perfect. It is not just an animal, but an echo of deep time, a body carved by physics, by survival, by stillness, through the rise and fall of continents, through the fire and ice of changing worlds. The same outline returns, whispering the same truth. Perfection, in nature, is not a frozen state. It is balance, found and refined through endless repetition. The crocodile did not stop evolving because it became simple. It stopped changing because it fit. Its body, its habits, its patience, all aligned so completely with the laws of water and gravity that there was little left to improve. It became a design that time itself would use again and again, not out of spite, nostalgia, but out of efficiency. Nature remembers through function. What endures does so because it works, not because it resists change, but because it becomes harmony. When we look at a crocodile today, lying motionless beneath the shimmer of reeds, we are not just looking at the present. We are looking at something that has watched the world's story unfold from its earliest chapters. Before the first birds took flight, before flowers turned sunlight into color, this shape already drifted through warm rivers, eyes just above the waterline, the same posture, the same patience, the same quiet power. To see it now is to look directly into the continuity of life itself, a thread unbroken across 200 million years. The crocodile carries that history in its silence. It does not announce itself. It does not change for the sake of novelty. It lives by the old rhythm, the same slow pulse that once guided creatures of another age. In its stillness, there is memory. Each breath it takes feels like a continuation of something ancient, as if time itself pauses to inhale with it. The river flows around its body, unaware that the same form once cut through other waters, under other skies, in worlds that have long vanished. Survival, as the crocodile teaches, is not a contest of power, but of alignment. Strength fades, speed fails, but balance endures. To last across ages, a creature must learn not to fight the world, but to move with it. The crocodile has mastered this art. It wastes nothing. It hunts only when the moment asks for it. It rests when the world rests. In that harmony, it has outlived entire dynasties of life. The dinosaurs rose in thunder and fell in silence, yet the crocodile waited, unchanged in the water's calm reflection. There is something deeply poetic in this endurance. The crocodile is not a monument to the past, but a bridge through it. It connects every era of life, the raw chaos of the early earth, the age of giants, the dawn of mammals, and the quiet pulse of now. It reminds us that nature's greatest wisdom often hides beneath the surface, slow and steady, carried in shapes that do not shout, but simply remain. When the world rebuilds itself after loss, when ecosystems collapse and reform, the same patterns reappear. Long bodies for stealth, eyes lifted for patience, a mind that waits rather than pursues. Each reemergence is a small act of remembrance, a returning to what the earth already knows. Perfection, it seems, does not evolve. It returns. The crocodile's story is the proof. It is a memory made visible, the living embodiment of nature's long understanding of balance. When all else changes, the sky, the sea, the very air, some shapes come back like the rhythm of a tide, drawn by laws older than life itself. And in that repetition lies a kind of peace, a promise that even as worlds fade and begin again, the essence of what works will find its way home. At dusk, when the light turns the river to bronze, the air hums with insects, and the surface ripples only with breath, the crocodile lies beneath the fading sky, unmoving. Its body glows softly in the dimness, ancient scales glistening like the stones of a forgotten temple. Water trickles over its back, tracing patterns that have been carved and recopied by time itself. In the distance, the first stars shimmer, faint and patient, reflecting in the river's dark skin. For a moment, the sound of the world narrows to a single heartbeat, deep, slow, steady, the same sound that has echoed beneath the water since before the first human ever stood at its edge. In that stillness, there is no past or future, only the quiet truth of endurance. The crocodile breathes, and the earth breathes with it. It is the sound of memory, the rhythm of perfection repeating itself, the voice of nature, remembering what it once made and never forgot. And beneath that calm surface, under layers of water and time, life continues to hum the same old tune, the shape of patience, the geometry of survival, the song of something too balanced to fade.